Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto hates himself part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Naruto was panting heavily as he stood there staring at Sasuke. The raven-haired boy was panting also, as they had been fighting each other for 30 minutes already. The sounds of the waterfall crashed around them, the two statues almost seeming like they were staring down at the two, as if this battle was more than just a simple fight. It was a contest of wills, a fight to see who was right in their beliefs. Naruto, in his belief that the village was your family and that your loyalty should never be shaken, or Sasuke, whose mission of vengeance and honoring the dead had driven him to try and run to Orochimaru's waiting hold with promises of power. Both boys believed heavily in their precepts, and neither could be shaken from them. Or at least, that what others always thought. Naruto glanced around, his face never betraying anything but his mind reeling and somewhat nervous from the presences he felt. Damn it, he thought, Orochimaru must be desperate to get Sasuke there. I guess the snake is still hurting from Gigi using the Shinigami to cut off his soul's arms. I wonder why they haven't made a move yet unless there you are, Kabuto. Come here to see just how powerful we both are. You pathetic traitor, getting your kicks from watching this. At least with Orochimaru, he only plays around with you when he wants to test your limits, but you're just a wannabe has-been whose only joy is pain and suffering. Still, you unfortunately have numbers on your side, so even if I do beat Sasuke, you'll prevent me from taking him back to the village. The kunai in Naruto's hands slipped to the ground, and Naruto fell to his knee while lowering his head, confusing Sasuke a little. Why do I keep fighting? I mean, seriously, what's really going to change? Even if I do get Sasuke back, everything will just go back to normal. Kakashi will just keep on being a lazy pervert. Sakura will just keep fawning over him while calling me an idiot and hitting me across the head. Bachan will just slap Sasuke on the hand and give him some sort of punishment, while trying to keep the council happy. Erosenin will keep on peeping on girls while just barely training me. And me, I'll still be scorned, no matter what. People will just keep ignoring me or whispering behind my back about the furball. They'll keep on wanting to see how far I'll go before I'll eventually fail. Hell, maybe I would become Hokage eventually, but they'll never respect me. They'll just respect the position I hold, but never me. This is all just so pointless. The kunai in Naruto's shoulder and right leg were aching, though it's not like the wounds were too serious. However, the one in his side was getting to be excruciating and making it a little hard to breathe from the pain. Thankfully, they had missed any major blood vessels or organ, though they were still impeding Naruto's movements. It was odd that Kyuubi wasn't healing his wounds right now, but then again, he was just probably being spiteful about Naruto being his jailer. Naruto finally raised his head again and looked back at Sasuke, his brother in everything but blood, but his eyes now were almost dead, which unnerved Sasuke greatly. Naruto was one of those people who was always so full of life and energy. No matter what the situation, he never lost hope in himself or his comrades and tried his hardest to make things right. But now, he just seemed so broken. Come on, Naruto. This isn't like you. Get up and fight. Prove to me your strength. He put on a sneer and said, "What's the matter, Dobe? Giving up already? We haven't even pulled out our strongest techniques yet. Maybe you really are weak after all." Naruto would have normally risen to the bait, but now he just looked at Sasuke with those eyes before sighing and lowering his head again. What's the point, Sasuke? What does any of this prove in the end? It's not like if one of us loses, it's going to say that person is wrong. Besides, even if I did go all out and possibly defeat you, it's not like I'll get that far in taking you back. Sasuke looked confused for a second, and Naruto sighed again. Can't you sense them? The Otonin all waiting in the forests on their side of the river? The moment I defeat you, if I could find it within me to do so, they'll just pop out of their hiding places and take you away while killing me. I guess Orochimaru really wants to make sure you make it to him. Sasuke stretched out with his senses, and his eyes widened when he realized Naruto was right. He growled a little and angrily gestured towards them. What does it matter, Naruto? If they were going to interfere, they would have done so already. All that matters is we prove once and for all who is the strongest between the two of us. Naruto chuckled mirthlessly, his empty laughter actually stinging Sasuke a little, before asking, and then what? If you win, you'll kill me to get those eyes to defeat your brother, and carry out your vengeance. After that, you'll realize that you've spent so much time chasing after power, you've forgotten other important things like finding love and happiness. Does Itachi need to die? Sure, I'll agree with you on that. But don't you think that if you just asked me, I would have helped you? Sasuke scowled and said bitterly, only I can be the one to kill Itachi. I can't have anyone else getting involved, or else the honor of our fight would be sullied. 2 or 3 on 1 is not the way to end this. Naruto's chuckle now turned into a hollow laugh. You forget that even Uchiha need teammates to watch their backs. Hell, even Itachi did when he was still in ANBU. You really think that Itachi had reached the peak of his power that night? That he'll stay at that level just so you could catch up? You may be a prodigy, Sasuke, but don't forget he was too. And don't forget that he probably won't be alone either when you find him. Even if it's only one guy, no doubt he would strong too. Suddenly, your one-on-one battle has become two-on-one, with you alone. Think you could become so strong as to fight two S-class Nukenin and still live after the battle? Orochimaru may have once been a part of their little group, but I'd been told he was one of the weaker ones. That's why he left them. Because he couldn't stand being around those stronger than him and stole from them out of spite. Sasuke was starting to get furious. Don't act like you know everything, Dobe. You're just trying to use words to deter me from my path, but they don't mean anything. Naruto's laugh this time filled the valley, a mad cackling that screamed pain and loneliness to those who could hear it. You're right. It's all meaningless, because nothing matters no matter what I say or do. Even if I did manage to drag your ass back to Konoha, I'll just get shunted off to the side again. And if I don't? I'll probably be even more hated than before, this time with our own team turning their backs on me, again. You would think that while Kakashi was training you for the Chunin exams, he could have just pulled me off to the side and used the Kage Bunshin to train me as well. But no. He didn't. And why? Because he seriously didn't care about what happened to me. Hell, he was probably hoping you would use his ultimate technique on me when we faced each other so that he could be rid of me. So he just shunted me off to the side with some shit teacher and taught you everything he could. I know he taught you more than just the Chidori and how to move faster. Hell, if all three of us had managed to get through the exams, I know he would have made the same move still, only then he would have taken Sakura along while spouting off some bullshit about her needing some intense training to ensure her survival and needing to concentrate on just you two. And Sakura? She probably would have just agreed with anything that was said, just so that she could be with her precious Sasuke-kun. Because, let's face it, I don't have a snowball's chance in hell in ever getting her to like me, no matter how many times I try to help her. Naruto laughed the same laugh again, which was starting to tear at Sasuke a little as he watched his normally exuberant brother give in to his grief and frustration. He did this for a few more seconds before continuing his rant. You think Neji wouldn't have tried to kill me? I can damn sure tell you that if he hadn't underestimated me, he probably would have. And that's because even when Jiraiya taught me, I still learned next to nothing except for summoning. Where was that mighty Rasengan technique when I could have needed it, instead of it being something to keep me occupied and out of his hair when we were looking for Bachan? What about some sort of taijutsu that could have helped me evade those Juken strikes that hurt like hell? Hell, even if I had tried to summon one of the toads to help me, they probably would have blown me off because the boss toad would have claimed I wasn't ready to use them yet. The only reason he helped me in that fight with Gaara was because of the Ichibi, and probably had some sort of duty to Konoha to help protect it, not because I needed the help. The dark clouds were starting to form, a few droplets of rain falling from them every here and there. A few tears were falling down Naruto's face, but he hardly noticed them nor the broken smile on his lips. He gestured wildly to the sky and yelled, and it's all because it's meaningless. Every single thing I do is meaningless. All I am is just some weapon for the village to use and then put aside when they're done with me, because my happiness and my dreams don't matter. I'm not a person to them, I'm a tool. A thing. And things don't have feelings. They're just meant to be used. What's even better, the power that I'm encouraged to utilize for the good of the village comes from the Kyuubi, the very thing that the very village despises and hates because it attacked our home the very day I was born. So suddenly, I'm not only the person Kyuubi was sealed into, I've suddenly become the Kyuubi, which gives them the excuse to pile on the hatred and misery because they somehow feel justified in doing it. Did I ask for this? Did I say that I wanted to live this life? Did I want some fuzzy murdering chakra entity put inside me? No. Because it's all just some big, goddamn cosmic joke that's being played, and I'm the goddamn punchline. His grin was starting to turn more and more insane, his eyes widening to match, and he raised his arms and head towards the sky and screamed, "So, come on. Laugh with me about my pointless life. Laugh with me at the gods' cruel jokes. Come on. Laugh with me." His broken laughter sounded through the air and seemed to travel for miles, cutting through the rain and reaching the ears of everyone nearby. The Otonin, even Kabuto, could only stare wide-eyed at this child who exuded such misery and loneliness that it had broken him in so many ways. Kakashi, having finished his A rank and was going to help Naruto's team secure Sasuke, had arrived just in time to hear Naruto rant and was staring wide-eyed from the tree-line as well. Does Naruto really think that I don't care about what happens to him? I only got Ebisu to teach the boy because I thought Naruto's chakra control needed a little bit of work before being taught anything new. I hadn't known it was because of a seal until later, and by the time that had been discovered, Jiraiya was teaching him, so I just figured it all worked out in the end. How was I to know the famed pervert would ignore him? He's the kid's godfather, for crying out loud. Yet, Kakashi knew that Naruto's words were ringing true. He could have taken Naruto along for training and done just what Naruto had said. In fact, he should have taken all of his team on the trip so that Sakura would have been able to get her skills up while Naruto and Sasuke prepared for the finals. But he had focused so much on Sasuke fighting Gaara that he'd forgotten that Neji was a dangerous opponent as well. Kakashi lowered his head in shame and thought, Minato-sensei, Kushina-sama, Obito, Rin, father, I've failed all of you. Sasuke just stared wide-eyed at this broken boy before him before looking away. Both of them had suffered, but Naruto had suffered more than much Sasuke could tell. To kill him just so Sasuke could get the Mangekyo Sharingan wouldn't prove anything. In fact, killing Naruto probably wouldn't grant him anything except guilt, as he didn't truly understand the boy before him. He had only seen the masked Naruto war, not the boy behind it, and therefore, how could he call Naruto his best friend when he didn't really know him? Naruto's laughter finally began to die down before turning to sobs as the boy fell to his knees. A few minutes of this passed before Sasuke looked back at him and asked, "What now, Naruto?" Naruto didn't look at him, but he chuckled darkly through his tears. Like I said, whatever I do is pointless. Return you to Konoha or lose you to Orochimaru. I still lose in the end. Sasuke just stared at the broken form before him, considering his options. He wouldn't kill Naruto, since he did think it was pointless. He couldn't go back to Konoha, because now they would all walk around him like on eggshells, teaching him only enough to get by so that he couldn't use his skills on the guards that would no doubt be put around him. Orochimaru probably would hold up his end of the deal, but only because Sasuke knew the Sannin wanted the Sharingan for his own. It seemed that because of Sasuke's brashness and lust for power, he would lose no matter what as well. Still, he chose this path, and he was going to see it through the end, damn the consequences. Sasuke slowly walked to Naruto and knelt down to lay a hand on the boy's shoulder, causing Naruto to raise his blank eyes towards the Uchiha. Sasuke stared into those eyes for a few seconds before growling out, "You'd better get stronger, Naruto. The next time we face each other, I want a battle worthy of both our skills." He quickly undid his headband, slashing the metal plate before shoving it into Naruto's pocket. "Hang on to that for me." Before Naruto could say anything, Sasuke then chopped the blonde's neck, sending him into unconsciousness. He stood on his feet as the Oto Nin surrounded them. Kabuto looked at Naruto's prone form before turning to Sasuke and asking, "Well? Shall we just kill him now and be done with it?" Sasuke shook his head and started walking towards Rice Country's border. "No. It's not worth anything to kill a broken person." Kabuto nodded his head slightly and said, "As you wish. Come on. Orochimaru-sama is waiting for you." Sasuke nodded, and they all shined away, leaving Naruto alone in the valley. Kakashi chose this moment to come out of the trees, Pakken following closely, and the little pug examined Naruto's injuries for a few seconds. He then looked to Kakashi and said, "The boy's injuries aren't too bad, though I am wondering why his tenant isn't healing him. We could still catch up to Sasuke if you want." Kakashi looked to the borders and then shook his head. "No. There were Jounin in that group, and Kabuto is almost A and B level. Fighting them would be suicide even if I wasn't only at half strength. Right now, we need to secure Naruto and his team and get them back to Konoha. Hopefully, when I debrief Tsunade-sama, we can figure out a way to fix this mess with Naruto. Kami, what have we done?" Pakken nodded his head and dispelled, intending to go to Konoha to inform Tsunade of the wounded. Kakashi lifted the boy onto his back, careful not to shift the kunai that were in him, and started to rush off towards Konoha. "We'll fix this, Naruto. We'll fix everything." Several hours later, Tsunade sighed as she leaned back into her chair. She and Shizen had spent the better part of the day trying to repair the damage that had been done to her nin. Chuji Akimichi suffered from extreme muscle loss and chakra overdose thanks to his family's special pills. Niji Hyuga had multiple arrow wounds, with the one in his shoulder going straight through and nearly hitting his heart. Kiba Inuzuka's injuries were lighter, but his partner Akamaru had been injured protecting him, and it wasn't clear if the dog was going to make it. Results were good so far, but it would be a battle for the puppy for a few days. Shikamaru Nara, the Chunin team leader for the mission, only suffered from a couple broken fingers from his family's jutsu but was otherwise fine and currently sitting in her office with Kakashi to be debriefed. It was thanks to the Sabaka siblings, Gaara, Temari and Kankuro, that she even had Nin coming back alive instead of in body bags. Shikamaru had currently informed her of everything he knew regarding the mission, thanks to his questions to the Sunanins, but there was still one glaring hole in the story regarding Naruto and Sasuke's fight, as Naruto had gone on alone to try and get Sasuke to come back. She turned to Kakashi, who hadn't spoken a word since coming into her office and was instead staring off into space with a look that something was on his mind. Wondering what was bothering the man, she nevertheless asked, "Kakashi? You were the only one aside from Naruto who could know what had happened in the Valley of the End. Can you please tell me what you saw?" Kakashi turned his head towards the female Hokage and sighed a little before saying, "After I had left Konoha, I started to push a little more chakra into my legs so I could reach Naruto in time to aid with Sasuke. Because of that, I got there just as the two of them had a pause in their fight. Both Naruto and Sasuke were wounded, Naruto the most, but not heavily. I was about to join in the battle, until Naruto started talking. I think he was trying to get Sasuke to see his side and explain to him that he wasn't alone. Unfortunately, I think the message struck too close to home for Naruto, and he seemed to start breaking down at a massive rate. I mean, Kami, just listening to the boy's voice as he ranted about everything, he ran a hand through his hair as he looked down. I've never heard anyone sound that broken, and the third shinobi war broke a lot of people." Tsunade frowned at Kakashi's words. Naruto, sound broken? Those words didn't exactly mix together, what with Naruto being the bundle of energy he was. She needed to examine this further. She pulled out the Sandame's orb and gestured to it. "This orb, my sensei made, not only makes it easier to see things within the village, it allows a person to project their memories for all to see. If you'll just put your hand on the seal, we'll be able to see and hear just what Naruto was talking about." Kakashi looked at the orb and sighed after a few seconds. As he started to move his hand towards the seal, he said, "Believe me when I say this. On the one hand, you'll want to hear this, but on the other, you really don't." He placed his hand on the seal, and the orb lit up and showed the image of Kakashi arriving at the valley. Not one thing was missed, showing Naruto ranting about his life being meaningless, Sasuke knocking Naruto out, and the Oto Nin showing up with Kabuto before leaving with Sasuke. When the orb was done, Tsunade was staring at the orb in shock. That couldn't have been Naruto. There's no way he would have given up like that. Shit, the kid faced down Orochimaru twice, for Kami's sake, and still couldn't be beaten down. I need to look into this further. The female Hokage turned to the Jounin and asked, "Where is Naruto right now?" Kakashi just shook his head. "I got him to the hospital, but with his injuries as they were, he didn't need to stay there. For all I know, he could be anywhere in the village right now. Find him. We need to get him to Inoichi to ascertain if he is a suicide risk, or he's just playing lost it, and do it quick. The last thing we need is some idiot civilian deciding to make this worse." Kakashi nodded his head slowly, his mind going through a few of Naruto's familiar haunts, until a glaring problem popped into his head. A glaring, pink-haired, green-eyed, female problem. Shit! Sakura! Sakura was currently striding quickly through the village, hoping to find her wayward teammate. She had heard through the grapevine that Naruto had failed to bring Sasuke back to the village. Not that she was really surprised, as Sasuke was on a slightly higher level than Naruto was, but she wanted to hear the words straight from the horse's mouth. Besides, she wanted to check and make sure at least one of her boys was okay, since she knew the two of them would have fought pretty hard. Naruto had better not have hurt Sasuke-kun too badly in the fight though. If he did, then he is going to get a piece of my mind. Cha! Make sure that Baka knows his place. She cracked her knuckles without thought and continued to look around the area. She was rewarded for her efforts when she saw him sitting on a bench in the park. She found it rather odd that people were shooting him weird looks and walking around him to keep a distance. But then again, he just seemed to be giving off this odd aura of gloominess and depression. His entire body seemed to slump forward, his head lowered so she or anyone else couldn't see it. His hands lay limply in his lap as he stared at them. His orange jacket was gone, leaving him only in his orange pants, black shirt and navy ninja shoes. Sakura showed a little sad frown and slowly walked over to him. Per Naruto. He's probably taking Sasuke's betrayal pretty hard. Oh well. Once I tell him everything will be alright and reassure him I'm not angry, he'll come back around in a few days. When she got near him, he didn't make any movement to show he knew she was there, and Sakura wondered if maybe he was asleep. As she debated whether or not to wake him, she nearly jumped out of her skin when Naruto said quietly, "Hello, Sakura." Sakura tried to calm her rapidly beating heart, but she put on a soft smile and said, "Hello, Naruto. I've been trying to find you for a little while now. I wanted to see if you're okay." He made a lackluster shrug and mumbled, "I'm fine." She frowned again and wondered, what the hell? Seriously, Naruto's never this depressed. What happened out there? Making the frown go away once more, she smiled again as she sat next to him. "Be that as it may, I still want to make sure you're alright. Now hold still." He barely even twitched when she laid a hand on his arm and started to gently run a hand along him, a steady stream of green chakra flashing from her palm as she ran a diagnostic jutsu she'd picked up in her spare time. Still, she didn't need to use the jutsu to see the areas where he was most injured, as the slashes in his shirt showed where the bandages were hiding. One deep stab wound on his leg, another on his shoulder, and one even deeper than those in his side, though thankfully it seemed to miss any vital areas. Sasuke, what did you do to him? And Naruto, did you really respond in kind? Would you two have really tried to kill each other? She narrowed her eyes when she took in his clothes again. Is he trying to make himself sick? Why didn't he get a change of clothes before wandering around? Just because he heals really well is no excuse to not take proper care of his bandages. Her expression turned thoughtful, and she turned her head a little away from the boy. Actually, I wonder if anyone's ever tried to test him for a Kekkai Genkai. I mean, having some form of super-accelerated healing without any form of damage to the user would be. Focus, you damn idiot! She snapped back to the present and focused on the boy before her. Even before she had approached him, she knew something was off, but now she was getting more and more concerned about his behavior. Sure, missions could be stressful and make the shinobi need some downtime to get their head back on straight, but this mission shouldn't have caused this much damage to a person's psyche, even if it involved a person's best friend betraying them. Sakura needed to find out what was causing her boy such distress, and damn it, she was going to find out and fix it. Naruto, listen. I know you're probably sad that you failed to bring Sasuke back, but it'll be okay, alright? I mean, at least we know that Orochimaru wouldn't go through this much trouble just to kill him. And if you think that I'm angry that you didn't keep the promise, I'm not. You tried your best, and that's all that I want. She was cut off by a hollow laugh, and when he raised his head to look her, she jumped back at his eyes. They were dead, as if his soul had decided to leave his body and leave behind a husk that moved and spoke. He just stared at her with a mirth that would have been nice to see if it didn't look so creepy and sad at the same time. My best, Sakura? I'll admit I tried my best at first. I really wanted him to come home, and damn it if I had to break his arms and legs and knock him unconscious to do so. He shot to his feet, causing Sakura to jump again, but he didn't seem to notice as he waved his arms erratically, making random gesturing as he continued. But you know what I realized as the battle wore on? What hit me after 30 minutes had passed of the two of us beating the crap out of each other? Huh. Do you really want to know? Sakura was reaching for him, her tone frightened when she said, and Naruto, please calm down. Your wounds. He ignored her, his eyes far away now. It's all just so fucking pointless. Everything that I do will be meaningless to this village, no matter if I give my absolute all or my piss pro worst. And it's all just because of what I hold inside me. No one wants to care about the Kyuubi brat, because, after all, since that's what he holds, it must be what he's become. Oh, he's now become the very thing we hate. Well, I guess we don't need to care anymore. Let's chase him down in the streets. Let's beat him into the ground. Let's throw stones. Let's starve him and overcharge him so that he's dirt poor and hungry no matter what. After all, he'll heal from it all and be good as new, all happy and shit like some goddamn retard. Sakura had frozen as she listened to the boy. Naruto holds the Kyuubi? I thought the Yondaime defeated it, not sealed it away. And what's he talking about? Surely no one would be as cruel as do that to a child. Would they? By now, a small crowd was starting to form, all of them wide-eyed and fearful of the crazed boy. Many of them whispered things about the Kyuubi breaking free or Naruto finally losing his mind, and they all wondered why the ANBU weren't trying to restrain him before he hurt anyone. The fact was, the ANBU were watching, but they were, for once, as stunned as the crowd as they watched the boy. Anyway, it's not like he had pulled a weapon or really done anything threatening, so it's not like they could just tackle him to the ground just because he had decided to start screaming in the middle of the park. Naruto had now noticed his little audience, and he smiled a crazed smile as his dead eyes took all of them in. He then cackled and yelled to them, Yes. Yes. Come and stare at your handiwork. Let's all just stare at the Kyuubi Jinchuriki like he's just some circus freak behind bars. In fact, let's just put him behind bars because we can. We can then spit on him and throw things at him more easily when he's no longer a moving target. 10 points if you can hit him in the heart. 50 if you can hit him on the head, with bonus points to anyone who can knock him out so we don't have to hear his screams of pain. Sakura felt tears welling up in her eyes as she stared at the teammate who was once so gung-ho and devil-may-care be reduced to what she was looking at, her hand clamped over her horror-dropped jaw. How could anyone do this to a child, especially one as sunny and bright as Naruto? I mean, yeah, I would hit him every now and again when he needed to calm down, but it's not like I hated him or anything. It's not like every single time I saw him, I'd greet him by knocking out his teeth. Naruto, what's happened to you? Naruto let out another cackle and looked around again before yelling, "Hey! We need more people, don't we? We can't form any angry mobs with just a few people, after all. I guess we need to get to the village center then. There will be tons of people to piss off there." He jumped into the air towards the rooftops, and Sakura managed to come back to her senses long enough to rush to her feet and jump after him, screaming, "Naruto! Wait!" He just laughed an empty laugh and kept bounding away, forming his signature jutsu and sending 100 of his clones in random directions. She didn't know what he was doing, but she knew it wouldn't be anything good. Hopefully she could reach him before he did anything drastic. Naruto finally landed in the village square, and Sakura landed near him, on her knees trying to catch her breath before standing straight and saying, "Naruto, please. You need to calm down. Listen, we can go to Tsunade-sama. She can make everything." Naruto just laughed bitterly and cut in. "Make everything what? Better? Nicer? Back to normal? Like any of the Hokages, past or present, really care about what happens to some no-name orphan whose future was sacrificed so some asswipes can have their damn comforts. After all, if the Yondaime really worried about me, then maybe he wouldn't have been so quick to use me for his insane plan. If the Sandaime had really cared about me, then maybe he wouldn't have been so quick to tell every asshole of the last generation what I held and just kept a goddamn secret. Or at the very least, he could have told me sooner about the damn fuzzball instead of when he had absolutely no choice except to. But nugh. I'm evidently not deserving of happiness or a future, because I guess my pain and suffering is meant to be some sort of manna from the gods for this forsaken speck of dirt. And the Godame? You really think some damn council is just going to let her have all her power just because she says so? Face it. She's just a general who's been buried in so much red tape, she can't see anything that's 3 feet in front of her. The clones had evidently done their job, because nearly everyone in the village had converged on this location, some confused, some angry, and all curious about what was so urgent. Naruto's crazed smile seemed to grow even further, and he spread his arms out to gesture to all of them. "No! These people right here are the true rulers of this godforsaken village. Everything here is just a matter of public opinion, and if the public doesn't like it, then it must be changed to their benefit. And if it pleases the village to have a scapegoat for their anger, then by Kami, they're going to get it. What do they care if some boy is sacrificed? Actually, that's what makes it so much fun, hurting someone who can't even defend themselves." He then turned to the stunned crowd and kept on yelling. "That's what you all came to see. The QB brat evidently wants to show everyone something, so you might as well come and see it. Well, guess what? I fucking don't care anymore, because you assholes took everything of meaning from me since I obviously don't deserve it. You won. You all goddamn won." Naruto started to laugh again like back in the valley, and the whole of Konoha shivered in fright, from the most hardened shinobi to the smallest of children, as the sounds of broken pain washed over them. Sakura could only stand there, tears falling freely down her face, as she wished to do something, anything, to just make this pain in her teammates stop. He then looked towards his stomach and yelled, "Hey, fuzzball! Wake up! Everyone's come here to see you. It's impolite to keep them waiting." When the stomach obviously didn't answer, he punched it a couple times and screamed, "Wakey wakey, fuzzbutt! You don't want to miss this." But Naruto wasn't done just yet, as he lifted his head towards the sky and screamed, "Hey, are all you gods up there watching this? Because if not, then you're about ready to miss the final punchline of your little joke down here. Hope you enjoy it." Everyone's eyes widened when the boy snatched a kunai from his pouch and raised it into the air pointing towards himself, and Sakura heard screaming, only to realize that it was herself doing it. The kunai swung down, and Sakura froze as blood sprayed in her face. "No. Please no." Naruto just laughed as he looked at the kunai now in his stomach, dark blood that was almost black gushing out as he ripped it out. He kept laughing insanely as he stabbed himself once more, twice more, 3 times in the same area. Even as blood began to flow out of his mouth, he didn't stop laughing. Still, he proved he was only mortal as he began to sway slightly as he grew weaker and weaker from the blood draining out of him. With the last of his strength, he managed to throw the kunai into the air randomly towards the crowd, saying, "Here. A souvenir to remember the day you watched the QB container die. Remember to cherish it." He cackled again as he started to fall, but he then felt something crash into him and lower him gently to the ground. When he looked at the person's face, he saw Sakura kneeling over him, tears running freely and choking out terrified sobs as her hands glowed green with what little healing techniques she knew. She kept on saying things between sobs, like, "I'm sorry, Naruto. Please don't leave me. And even I need you. I need you so much, Naruto." Sakura kept trying to close the wounds, but her skill was just barely holding back the bleeding. She raised her head to the crowd and pleaded, "Please. Someone. Anyone. Please help him. But no one moved, so stunned about the boy's actions that they might as well have been statues. Sakura was about to scream at them again, until a red mist began to rise from the wounds and form into a red-headed, red-irised woman of striking beauty who floated above the dying boy and glaring at him. She wore a red kimono with black trim, and 9 tails that were waving around all over the place came out from her waist behind her. She continued glaring at him for a few seconds before saying in a melodic tone, "So, this is what you finally boiled down to. After all that posturing and bravado, you're just a child who just can't deal with his problems and tries to run away through death. If I had known this was going to happen, I would have just let you die when the old pervert threw you off that cliff several months ago. At least then, you would have died on impact instead of prolonging your suffering." Naruto just chuckled and looked at her. "What you complaining about, Kyubi? At least now you can go free from your prison. Why do you think I stabbed there?" Kyubi snarled and raised her hands in exasperation. "Oh please. If I had wanted to escape that badly, then I just would have let you die the first chance I got, you little baka. No, I wanted to see what you could become. You had potential, Naruto. More than both of those Uchiha brats and Orochimaru combined, and you choose to willingly throw it away by killing yourself." By now, Tsunade, Kakashi, and Jiraiya had landed in the middle of the square. Tsunade managed to get one look at Naruto before her eyes widened in terror, and she screamed, "Naruto!" Kyubi snorted and turned to them. "Oh yes, and now the idiot brigade arrives, and rather late I might add. Come to see the result of your hard work up close instead of through that little orb. After all, this is what the village wanted, right? To see the so-called Kyubi die for its sins of attacking the village and killing your precious Yondaime? Fools, the lot of you. Your wretched Uchiha clan tried to use me as a weapon, only to lose control and set me loose upon the village. And killing your Yondaime? The man chose to sacrifice himself to seal me. I didn't make him do jack shit. In fact, I'm more of the victim here than the rest of you, and the rewards for my troubles is to be sealed away. Besides, I am immortal, and as such, I can't be killed in any way. Even if I were to be dragged to the afterlife, I would still just come right back. So really, if you manage to kill him, the most you would have accomplished is killing one boy." As the villagers around them widened their eyes and paled at what this meant, she turned her glare back at the boy and said, "You think you can just run away from your problems? Tough. I was hoping that by withholding my chakra, you would snap out of it and seek my help to achieve your goals, but your self-righteous stubbornness is about to get you killed. So guess what, buddy boy? You're living, and that's final." The Kyubi collapsed again into red mist and flowed back into Naruto's body. He spasmed a little as the red chakra began to envelop his body completely, his wounds healing at an extraordinary rate. Sakura could just sit there, amazed at what she just saw, but her gaze snapped back to the boy as, too weak to do anything else thanks to blood loss, he whispered out, "Please no, Kyubi. I don't want to do this anymore. Please, I'm begging you." Her heart stopped as he said, "Please let me die." New sobs threatened to come out, but she choked them back and reached down to the boy. The red chakra began to recede, allowing her to pull him closer as she wrapped her arms around his chest. She rested his head against her chest, her knees propping his back up to allow her to hold him. As Tsunade rushed over to check on the blonde boy, tears spilling out of her own brown eyes, Sakura gently stroked Naruto's hair and hummed softly to him as he began to finally go to sleep, still murmuring, "Let me die. Let me die. Let me die." Kakashi could only sit there in the Hokage's office, his head in his hands as he tried to figure out where everything went wrong with his team. A traitor to the village, a broken boy who attempted suicide, and a former fangirl who would no doubt now suffer her own emotional issues from watching aforementioned second teammate try to kill himself. Yeah, he was definitely not going to be winning any awards for best sensei anytime soon. He finally lifted his head to survey the other occupants in the room. Tsunade was trying to fight back more tears as she tried to figure out what to do now. The Kyubi had been right. Naruto would have gone far in the shinobi ranks, possibly even have become Hokage eventually, but now he was strapped down to a bed in the psych ward with no fewer than 6 AMBU keeping watch over him to make sure either he himself or some uppity villager didn't decide to finish the job. No doubt the council was going to try and justify Naruto's attempt as reason enough to have him removed from Konoha's forces. After all, you can't have some of your nin breaking down just because life gets a little hard. Kakashi wanted to snort at the thought. Yeah, it must really look that easy from your high perches, especially when you're the ones making things hard. Jiraiya was standing near one of the windows, scowling down at the village both his own sensei and student had died for. Most of the people were in shock after seeing Naruto's little display, and not even his most die-hard opponent could deny that they had done more than just a little in helping to break the boy. All of his plans on a training trip to get him away from Konoha and hide him from Akatsuki now lay shattered at his feet, And all just because some dumbass villagers couldn't keep their hypocritical trap silent for 2 minutes to really see the boy for who he was. What was even worse was the fact that he realized that he himself hadn't helped any by ignoring the boy's training for his research. By acting like he didn't care, he wound up shattering the boy's trust in authority figures, and it was going to take a while for Naruto to trust anyone in a position of authority for quite a while. Finally, Sakura was just sitting there on the couch, staring at her hands while her eyes seemed so far away. The girl was going to need some major counseling before she could be let back onto the forces as well, though at least Kakashi could be thankful that she probably wouldn't try to commit suicide as well. Still, he would need to keep an eye on her just in case. He sighed and turned back to the Hokage. You're sure you can't just head them off and declare Naruto under some sort of medial emergency? Tsunade shook her head. When you brought him in after the mission, the doctors checked him out, and nothing else wrong with him aside from the cuts and stab wounds. Maybe if I could have confined him to the hospital in time, we could have avoided this somehow, but it's too late now. When the council convenes tomorrow, he'll be removed from the rosters permanently. The only to save him now would be to make him seem like he's too valuable to go to waste, and their prejudices against the Kyuubi will work against him in that regard. Up until now, they believed that Kyuubi would die if Naruto did, and I don't think they're going to be willing to listen to her no matter what she says. There was more silence at this revelation, until Jiraiya cautiously said, well, there's one way to help him keep his shinobi status, and probably give him diplomatic immunity as well. Tsunade's eyes snapped over to her perverted teammate, and she said, Jiraiya, no. We all swore it would be too risky until he was a Chunin. He's not ready to know this, especially not now when he's so vulnerable. The knowledge would crush him. Jiraiya snorted and turned to look at her. Come on, Haim. You know as well as I do that the kid would have made Chunin during the last exams if the council hadn't been so biased against him. Hell, it probably would have taken him killing Orochimaru himself in order for them to give him the rank, and that's still grudgingly. And as for the knowledge breaking him? Seriously, Haim? I don't think he could become any more broken than he is now. If we want to keep him as a Konoha shinobi, this will probably be the only way, and you know it. Tsunade scowled before turning away. Of course I do. I just don't have to like it. There's too many unknown variables to risk, and the kid's luck looks like it's running out. If we do this, not only do we run the chance of it backfiring, everything that is supposed to be his to inherit could wind up filling the council's coffers. What are you all talking about? The adults in the room jumped, as they had forgotten the fourth member in the room who was currently staring at them in curiosity. Tsunade managed a soft smile for the girl and said, it's nothing, Sakura. After all, even if we wanted to implement the plan, she spared a glare for Jiraiya before smiling back at the girl, we would still need a few more certain circumstances to happen to make it ironclad. Sakura narrowed her eyes at the woman, and Tsunade couldn't help but wonder, damn, this girl is going to be formidable one day if she gets the right training. I wonder if she would be interested in an apprenticeship with me? Shizen is nearing her mastery after all. The girl just kept staring at the aged Hokage before saying icily, what do you mean? And if it will help Naruto, then why aren't you trying it? The three adults glanced at each other, and then sighed at their own carelessness before Kakashi said, listen carefully, Sakura. What you're about to learn in this room cannot leave it unless we decide it can be shared. The information told could be more of a danger to Naruto than he already knows. If the wrong people in this village find out about it, Naruto losing his rank will be the least of our worries. Sakura nodded her head in acceptance, and Jiraiya pulled out a scroll and unsealed several items, mostly official documents. Motioning the girl forward, he slid a piece towards him and asked, do you know what this is? Sakura glanced at the paper and answered, it's a birth certificate. Why? Look at the baby's name. She glanced down the page, and she blanched at the name. It's Naruto's certificate. Good. Now look at his parents' names. Sakura's skin started to turn even paler, and she leaned back into her chair. Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze. The Yondaime Hokage and his wife were Naruto's parents. Tsunade nodded her head and said, exactly. Naruto is related to 4 Hokages by blood, his father directly, and then the Shodaime, Nidaime, and Godaime, me, through his mother's lineage. That alone is enough to get the council howling after him. If they managed to sink their claws into him, they could have cared less about the last Uchiha, and would have kissed up to Naruto instead. If they were to find this out now, when Naruto is not in a right mental state, they would use this as an opportunity to access everything that belongs to him, and steal it for themselves. Jiraiya pulled out a separate stack of papers from the pile and said, these right here are clan documents signifying the validity of a clan's status in Konoha. Since both the Namikaze and Uzumaki lines had been legally recognized as clans, that would make Naruto the dual head of these families. Hell, He could even probably try to obtain the Senju name for himself if Tsunade were to pass on unexpectedly, or if she named him her heir. In any case, this creates another problem, as being the head of even one nearly extinct clan puts him automatically in the Clan Restoration Act when he turns 15. At which point, if he doesn't already have a wife by then, the council could see fit to select their own candidates for the position. Add in to his other titles, actual or potential, and we're looking at no less than 6 women all handpicked by those bastards. Sakura rubbed her forehead, as her eyes almost seemed to pop out of her head in shock. Which means that Naruto could have a large group of wives whose only motivations would be to steal from him, and keep him on a short leash. Once a few heirs are born, then Naruto would probably be killed in some sort of arranged accident or unfortunate incident to get rid of him. Jiraiya smirked. Smart girl. Now you're beginning to see our dilemma. If we were to introduce this tomorrow as a way to save Naruto's shinobi career, then chances are he'll be dead by 16, at best. At worst, well, let's just say he'll survive long enough to impregnate a few of them. Sakura frowned as she recalled some of Jiraiya's earlier words. But that would only be if he wasn't married before 15, right? If he was married, then he would be able to hold off the council and decide whether or not he wants more wives or just the one, correct? Tsunade sighed and nodded her head. Yes. That is correct. Shinobi law allows marriages as early as 12, due to the number of premature deaths in our line of work. And while it is understood a child between the couple shouldn't be born until 18, many dying clans choose to overlook that unspoken rule and allow children to be born when the mother is 14. An archaic and somewhat barbaric practice, but also one we've never really had to worry about for a while now. In any case, the main problem is we don't have any girl who would be interested in. Sakura's whispered voice cut through Tsunade's words. Yes, you do. 3 pairs of eyes snapped to the girl, who had lowered her head to avoid their gaze. Kakashi's mouth could be seen moving wordlessly behind his mask before he turned to the other 2 adults. Jiraiya looked as shocked as he did, but Tsunade just looked suspicious. The elder woman stared at the younger for a few minutes before asking, Why? Why would you be willing to go so far for Naruto when up until now you only had eyes for Sasuke? Sakura sniffled a little before raising her teary eyes towards Tsunade. The Hokage searched the girl's eyes and body movements for any deceit or play acting, but she was either completely genuine or a better liar than anyone thought her capable. She listened as Sakura said, What else have I got? I don't know if I'm capable of being a shinobi, and even if I were, my team has either turned traitor or attempted suicide. At the very least, I can help keep my other teammates' dream alive, even if it means I'll have to give up my own future. Sure, you could ask Ino or Hinata or Tenten-san or even Temari-san to do it, but it wouldn't be fair for them to have to give up their shinobi careers to take care of a broken man, not to also mention their families probably wouldn't approve of the match no matter what. Aside from marrying Naruto, how else am I really of use? Tsunade had to admit, she was impressed with the girl's conviction. No doubt seeing her only remaining teammate lose it like that and try to kill himself caused her to latch onto him any way she could so that she could have some sort of stability left in her life. Sakura had gotten too deep into the shinobi lifestyle to just walk away from it, and at least this way, by marrying into a shinobi clan, she could still train to be a ninja if she desired. If not, then she would be plenty busy with other clan matters such as managing the books and tending to the estate to keep her active, something she is right about regarding the other girls, who were expected to stay as shinobi due to their particular skills. Finally, a soft smile graced Tsunade's lips, and she leaned forward to stroke the girl's cheek. She then gently asked, Are you sure about this? Because once you do this, you can't ever go back. Divorce is not legal when it comes to clans. When you're in for life. So even if Naruto were to turn out to be an abuser, not that he ever would, you would have to grit your teeth and bear it until you die. So I ask again, are you sure of this? Sakura's eyes seemed to steel themselves, and Tsunade could feel the girl firm up and strengthen herself underneath the older woman's touch. When Sakura nodded her head, Tsunade pulled the girl close to her and kissed her forehead before hugging her tightly, whispering, Thank you, Sakura. Thank you for saving him. Sakura smiled a little and returned the hug. When Jiraiya then hollered, Come on, everyone. Group hug. And proceeded to encase the 2 of them into large embrace, she couldn't help but laugh at his antics, especially when Tsunade kept playfully hitting him while grinning and yelling for the pervert to put them down. When Shizen came in, making sure to close the door behind her, to see what was going on, Kakashi decided to rush to her and wrap his arms around her before swinging her around and around, confusing the poor girl and causing Sakura to laugh again. When they had finally calmed down, Tsunade then began to feverishly rifle through her desk. Okay, first things first. We need a blank marriage certificate. Kakashi! You and Shizen go find one of the timestamps. There should be some from the last few days in the storage room. Kakashi nodded and nearly left before Sakura said, Sensei, make sure the date is for 2 nights ago. The man nodded and followed Shizen through the door. When Tsunade finally found the paper needed, she looked at the girl strangely. Why 2 days ago, Sakura? Sakura grinned a little. First off, it will make the document seem like it has had time to go through proper channels. If the council were to go looking for it tomorrow when this all happens, they would find a marriage certificate that they can't refute since it went through the 48-hour wait period for appeals. Second, it will give us a better edge, because Naruto's breakdown occurred today. If we signed the marriage license 2 days ago, when he was still considered to be in fit mental health, they can't claim that Naruto signed this with his judgment impaired. This then ties in with my third point, which is, on that night, Naruto and I were seen by various witnesses together before Sasuke even left the village, which would further solidify our case against the council. For all they know, Naruto had just convinced me that he was the one for me, and I insisted that it be made legitimate. We could even spin some kind of story about how we were going to announce our upcoming wedding ceremony for the public to attend when Naruto came back from the mission, and how my tearful plea was for a dear friend rather than a crush gone wrong. Everyone stared at the girl in shock, before Tsunade's lips formed into a sadistic grin. She barked out an amused laugh and said, "Oh, Sakura. You are going to be formidable for the council to deal with, indeed." Sakura's grin widened a little further before she continued. "Actually, it gets even better, Tsunade-sama. I also know of a way we can undercut the council entirely and get the fire daimyo involved to dissolve the council permanently. This will allow us some more breathing room in the future, and then we don't have to worry about them breathing down Naruto's neck to marry more women." This got both Jiraiya's and Tsunade's attentions, and Jiraiya said with a slow grin, "Go on." Sakura got up from her chair and grabbed a book of the Konoha laws before flipping through the pages rapidly. When she finally got to the law she was looking for, she laid the book down and pointed out the text. "All right. It says in Law 26, subsection D, regarding all clan matters in Konoha, that, once a person has been named to be part of a clan by the council, under no circumstances may the council prevent said individual from attaining their rightful positions. When the council named Naruto as an Uzumaki but declared him an orphan of common status, they inadvertently denied him as being a part of the clan, meaning that the council was involving itself in clan affairs they had no right being involved in. They wouldn't even be able to claim ignorance of the matter, because the Uzumaki clan was still well known enough to have some pull in political circles in Hai no Kuni." As the two older Nin's grins grew wider, Sakura raised a halting finger and sing-songed, "But wait, there's even more. Since it is unlawful to name a person who is not of clan blood to be part of a clan, as listed in subsection F, they all but admitted directly that Naruto is Kushina-sama's child, since she was the only possible Uzumaki living in the village at the time who could be his mother. Henceforth, by wrongfully denying that Naruto was Kushina's, they also wrongfully denied his right to the Namikaze clan, since it was proven that Kushina and Minato were married. If anyone were to try and deny this, like by saying that Kushina-sama could have slept with another man, then they would have to subject their claims to a blood test, which would be performed by an independent party, and would test positive anyway since we know Naruto is Minato-sama's son. In other words, Naruto was not only wrongfully denied his heritage by the council, they prevented a dual head of two clans from doing his duties for his family. The fire daimyo would then have no choice but to remove every council member from office, since they were all present the day he was declared an orphan, and give full powers once more to you. You can then, in turn, use those powers to declare the council dissolved permanently, bringing Konoha back under military dictatorship like it was meant to be and allowing you to rewrite the laws so that it stays as such." By now, Jiraiya had started cackling with delight before saying, "By Kami, girl, you are the most devious individual I have ever had the pleasure of knowing. I'll get started on this and send a missive to the daimyo now. If we plead urgency, he'll get here right on time tomorrow for the council meeting. With the independent third party already there, the council is as good as gone." The two women were now alone in the room, and Tsunade leaned back from her desk and rested her head on her arm. "You do realize that the little plan you just told us would probably work without having to get married, right? If the council can be dissolved." Sakura shook her head, stopping whatever the woman was going to say. "No, Tsunade-sama. If we try to do this without the marriage in place, the chances of it succeeding drop drastically. I will admit it would still be possible, but you would have to introduce the issue in a delicate manner, which will require time you don't have. This will be the quickest and easiest way." Tsunade wanted to ask more, but the resolve in the girl's eyes prevented her from doing so. "Oh well, so be it then. Let's see just how far that resolve goes in fixing Naruto and making him happy. If anything, this will give me enough time to find someone else before revealing the documents as falsified. The punishments from that will teach her if she decides to utilize this to her advantage." She glanced down at the certificate and sighed a little. "I just really hope I know what I'm doing." "All right then, Sakura. Go ahead and sign here." She pointed to a line on the page. "In the first line, sign your new name as Uzumaki Namikaze. The line next to it is reserved for your maiden name Haruno. Sakura did so, signing her full name with a small flourish, and smiled a little. Sakura Uzumaki Namikaze, I will admit, it does have a nice little ring to it. She looked up to Tsunade. Tsunade-sama, how are we going to get Naruto to agree to this? With the state he is in right now, he might be suspicious of our motivations, and we need his actual signature in order to make this work. Tsunade shook her head a little. We'll worry about that on our way to the hospital. You are certain about this, Jiraiya-san? If this all turns out to be a lie. Jiraiya bowed to the man and said, Yes, my lord. I swear to you that everything is as true as I say it. Truly, this was one of the most clever things Jiraiya had ever done, even counting that one time he managed to sneak into the all-women's hot springs resort when Tsunade was bathing there and not get caught. He thanked the gods every day that he was never discovered, since if he had been. Well, he liked his family jewels intact and where they currently resided, thank you very much. In any case, coming back to the present, this little scheme was truly one of his best ideas. Rather than send a message to the daimyo right away and hope it got to him in time, Jiraiya reverse summoned himself to Mount Maiboku, the home of the Toad Summons, and then, informing the Toads of the current situation, and put some of them, especially Gamabunta, into a right angry state, got one of the stronger Toads to take him via reverse summoning to right outside the gates of the Palace of the Fire Daimyo. This way allowed Jiraiya to relay the message personally and leave nothing to chance. Every single advantage he could get Naruto for tomorrow was needed, after all. The Fire Daimyo stood from his seat at his desk and strode over to the windows, gazing out at the gardens as he began to lose himself in his thoughts. So the child of Minato and Kushina survived that night. Not only that, but he is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Why have I never been informed of this? My lord, with all due respect, Sarutobi-sensei felt it was too risky to reveal the boy's heritage given the climate of Konoha at the time. I would have agreed, but I have always questioned his decision to reveal his Jinchuriki status. It seems that everything that has happened in the last 2 days has been because of that choice. The daimyo hung his head and let out a sad sigh. Truly, this news is heartbreaking. To hear that the child of my close friends was abused in such a manner that he would attempt suicide, it makes me wonder if I should be filled with sorrow or rage at this whole scenario. He looked back to the old pervert. And you are certain they would deny his heritage if you mentioned it in their meeting tomorrow? Jiraiya nodded his head. Without a doubt, my lord. They have done so once already out of ignorance, and they will most assuredly stick to their resolve to ensure Naruto's life stays miserable. After all, it's not as if this infraction of the rules will have probably been the first time. The man's gaze hardened a little as his thoughts took him away again, and Jiraiya wondered for a moment if he had pushed too far. Much to his relief, the daimyo turned back to his desk and said, I will have my entourage prepare everything, and I shall leave for Konoha at first light. If I do not appear at the time for the meeting, tell Tsunade she has my permission to delay it until I get there. This issue will not go unresolved. Jiraiya bowed to the man and shined away. Sakura felt nervous. No, scratch that. She was a bundle of nerves that were tightly tied together and threatened to shake her whole body. There was also this overwhelming fear gnawing at her mind that something horrible might happen while she was inside that room. After all, the last time she met with her teammate to try to help, she wound up setting him off on a self-destructive rampage. That was probably the reason she stood frozen outside Naruto's room with Tsunade looking at her strangely. She managed to draw in a shaky breath and let it out slowly. No, it's not going to be like last time. Calm down, Sakura. This will show him that there is someone who cares about him. Oh Kami, please let him see that. Taking another deep breath, she raised a hand, opened the door, and nearly froze at what she saw. Laying on the bed was Naruto, his arms and legs drawn into a spread eagle position by the straps on the bed. Clad in only his boxer shorts and a hospital gown, he didn't look like he would be able to move in the slightest, as the restraints weren't just on his wrists and ankles but his upper and lower arms, thighs and calves as well, with a large strap across his chest as well. He was facing away from her, looking out the window, but she knew his eyes were probably as dead as before, if not worse. Steeling herself, Sakura turned to Tsunade and asked, Tsunade-sama, can you have your ANBU leave the room? I want this to be private. Tsunade nodded and made a motion with her hands, and Sakura felt 6 presences leave the room. She then turned back to the bed and put on a soft smile as she approached her hurting husband-to-be. She leaned down and gently placed a hand on Naruto's cheek, saying in a soft tone, Naruto? He slowly turned his head towards her, and she stopped herself from jumping back at the sight of his eyes. No matter how many times she saw them, it always frightened her to see something without the light of life within. Steeling herself once more, she leaned down and smiled at him. Listen, Naruto. There's something very important I need to talk to you about, but first I need you to do something for me. Naruto snorted at the last part. Figures. Even strapped to a bed, I'm still being ordered around like a dog. Sakura tried to not let his words cut too deep. After all, he was kind of right, but this was necessary. Naruto, I need to speak to Kyubi-san. Naruto's eyes widened, and for the first time that day, Sakura finally saw some emotion in his eyes. Pure, unbridled fear. He thrashed a little in his bindings, trying to pull away from her, as he whispered, No. Sakura leaned forward and touched his face again, the smile replaced with a sad, concerned look. Naruto, please. I wouldn't ask you if it wasn't important. He stared right at her, but she could feel his body trembling under her touch. Please. I don't want her out. I've finally managed to silence her. She whispers to me, always whispering, telling me to stop giving up, to make a difference. He laughed bitterly as his gaze traveled far away, his speech turning rapid. Can't make a difference, never could. Why doesn't she yell at me anymore? Was always simpler when she yelled, could hate her easier, but whispering makes it hard to hate, almost makes it feel like she cares. But Kyubi never really cares, only for herself, don't know why she'd act like she does. Probably wants something, yes, always wanting but never gives back. No, never gives anything back, would see it as weakness. Sakura replaced her hand onto his cheek, this time stroking his whisker marks with her fingers. The action seemed to have a positive effect, as Naruto stopped his rapid ranting and almost leaned into her touch and actually purred a little. She had to repress a small smile. So stroking his whiskers calms him down. That will help. Besides, it's kind of adorable. Aloud, she said, Naruto, if you let me talk to Kyubi, I'll try and get her to promise to stop whispering, but that's only if you let her come out. Naruto turned to look at her, the fear still there, but much to her relief, he then gave the most timid of nods and closed his eyes. At first, nothing seemed to happen, until his body suddenly relaxed. When he opened his eyes again, they weren't the cobalt blue of before, but the deep crimson of Kyubi. His whisker had thickened, and his incisors were jutting out from under his lip, making him look more like the being that he carried. Kyubi Naruto glanced around and took notice of Sakura. His lips scowled a little before a harsh tone then said, And why, pray tell, would I be interested in meeting with you, Pinky? What can you possibly offer me that would be of interest? Sakura stared for a second before her lips tugged into a smug smile. Don't act so superior, Kyubi-dano. After all, what I've come to offer is a way for Naruto to keep his potential rather than be left to rot in a straitjacket in some padded room. That is what you want, right? To see just how far Naruto can go in this world? Kyubi growled for a second before then chuckling a little. Well, I can at the very least claim you've caught my interest. Whether you obtain whatever help you need from me or not is a different matter altogether. Speak. The way things are now, Naruto runs the risk of being removed from the Shinobi Corps and being shoved away into some mental asylum until the council finds a way to remove you and put you into a new vessel. What I'm proposing is a way to protect both you and him, as well as allowing him to start reaching that great potential you keep mentioning. To make this work, however, I need two things. Name them. She held out the marriage document for Kyubi to look at. As you can see, we have prepared a marriage license between Naruto and I. By having him get married, he will be able to finally come into his inheritance and begin to train in earnest, once we've managed to calm him down and help him past his problems, of course. In order to make this legal, I need him to sign this document of his own free will. Kyubi raised an eyebrow at the girl. And where do I come into all of this? Since it needs to be his own decision to sign thanks to the seals in that paper, I can't do it for him. What I need from you specifically is to seize control of Naruto's body should he ever try to take his life again. While you seem to be able to heal everything short of death, the added strain of the actions will do more harm than anything else in Naruto's recovery. I'd rather not have made some progress with him, only to lose it all sometime later when he makes another attempt. Not to also mention, I'd rather not have the village make a spectacle of itself whenever Naruto decides to attempt this in public. She huffed a little and crossed her arms. Also, will you please stop whispering to him? I don't know what you're trying to accomplish with that, but it's freaking Naruto out and making his condition worse. If anything, please speak normally if you try and talk to him. Kyubi rolled her eyes but nodded anyway. Sakura's cheeks then turned a little pink, and she turned her head away slightly when she then said, Hey, also, there was one other thing I wanted to ask of you. Curious about the girl's sudden nervousness but nonetheless amused, Kyubi asked, Oh? And that is? Sakura raised her head to look at Kyubi again, though her cheeks were still pink. I wish to ask for your blessing regarding this marriage. Tsunade, content with leaning herself against the wall as this played out, widened her eyes in shock at Sakura's request. Kyubi as well was shocked, until she narrowed her eyes and said, I fail to see how that really matters. Sakura shook her head and replied, "You're wrong, Kyubidano. It does matter. None of this will make a difference if you refuse to see me as worthy of your help, and I can't help Naruto without yours. Even if I were to give up everything and be by his side 24/7, something may still happen that I might not be able to stop. I can't risk that, not when Naruto's life may be at stake." Kyubi stared at her for a few minutes, eyes narrowed and judging, before saying, "You are weak, girl. That much I have always been able to tell in all the years the kid has known you. The only time you ever made any effort towards someone else's happiness was when you were pursuing the Uchiha, and I honestly think that if he had wanted it, you would have stripped naked in the middle of Konoha and let the entire village gang rape you without a care in the world because it was what the Uchiha wanted." Sakura lowered her head in shame at her previous actions, and she was about ready to call this entire affair hopeless, when Kyubi surprised her. "Still, you never were exactly cruel to the kid, beat him around a little, yes, but never cruel, and sometimes you showed that you cared, somewhat. I will even admit, you being willing to sacrifice your entire future for his with no guarantee of happiness, that takes real guts, kid. More than any other girl your age, and maybe even some twice yours. So, fine. You have my blessing for this union. But be warned," Kyubi continued after seeing a happy smile on Sakura's face. "If you do anything that I see as unbeneficial to the kid's welfare, I'll make your life a living hell. Your life will become so horrible that every night you will beg me to kill you, only to suffer even worse the next day. Do you understand me?" Sakura turned a little pale but nodded to show that, yes, she did understand. Kyubi smirked and said, "Good. Now take off your shirt." Sakura turned a shade paler as her eyes widened in shock, and she began to stammer out questions as to why, only for Kyubi to roll her eyes and say, "You claim to need my help, yes? In order for me to help you to my fullest extent, I need a way to be in contact with you since I can't inhabit Naruto's body every single time we need to talk. What's going to happen is that I will place a seal on your shoulder, allowing the two of us to create a mental link, as well as giving you a couple other things that we'll discuss later. Anyway, since that cheongsam doesn't look like it stretches, you'll need to take it off if you don't want it ripped." Sakura, still rather hesitant about the whole thing, nevertheless nodded her head and removed the aforementioned clothing, dropping it to the floor as she approached the bound, possessed boy. Kyubi gestured to come closer and closer with her head, until Sakura was leaning almost nose to nose to her. Suddenly, Kyubi shot forward and latched her teeth into the girl's young skin, pumping in her demonic chakra through her canines while the rest of her body strained against the restraints, nearly snapping them in the process. Sakura stifled a cry as she felt something be burned in her, writhing and shifting in one spot, filling her with an unholy fire that seemed to peel away her very soul. She refused to scream, however. If Kyubi was going to take a delight in her pain at some point, it wasn't going to be now. So she clenched her teeth and waited for the minutes to pass until this thing was finished. Finally, after what felt like hours of agony, Kyubi released the grip of her teeth, allowing the girl to stumble back. Sakura gripped the area she'd been bitten, but thankfully, the burning feeling was receding. She lifted her hand and saw the mirror in the corner of the room. Curious, she walked over to it and turned her back towards it before looking over her shoulder. There, emblazoned on her right shoulder, sat a mark that looked eerily like a fox with 9 tails, wrapped around a seal that she couldn't begin to comprehend. She didn't know how she knew, but to her, the seal looked completely complex despite being shrunk down to only about an inch or two wide. Picking up her discarded clothing and putting it back on, she turned to Kyubi and said, "Now that we've taken care of business, may I please speak to Naruto? If we don't get the document filed soon, the council might hear word of it and try to block it." Kyubi stared at her with crimson eyes for a second before nodding and saying, "Very well. Before I leave, though, I wish to tell you this. If you somehow are unable to get the boy to sign that paper, then I will command the seal to vanish, since our deal involved the two of you being together." When Sakura nodded her head in understanding, Naruto's eyes closed again. As he regained control, it was like watching the reverse of what happened earlier as his body seemed to tense back up when his cerulean eyes opened once more, his whiskers and canine teeth receding to their original states. He nervously glanced around, his whispered mutterings turning erratic again, before Sakura reached down again and stroked his whiskers to calm him down. He silenced and cautiously turned to look at her. There was a gentle smile on her face, her green eyes sparkling with hope, and she was touching him with such care. Probably afraid I won't hurt her. Doesn't explain the hope, though. What does she want? Still, when she strokes my marks, it actually feels nice. She kept stroking his cheeks a little while longer, causing him to begin purring again, eliciting almost silent giggles from both Sakura and Tsunade. Finally, she then said, "Now, Naruto, I have something to tell you about, and I need you to listen to me, okay? Never forget that I am trying to help you, even if you think differently. Alright? Will you at least listen to what I have to say?" Naruto stared at her, wondering what her game was, but nodded his head anyway. Sakura's smile widened a little, almost cautiously, and she continued, "As it stands right now, Naruto, the council is going to do whatever it can to confine you further. They will claim that eventually you will turn on the villagers, and they will take you away. I know you wish to avoid this, Naruto. You may act like you don't care anymore, but I know you will dread being locked in a room alone, forever denied any human contact, with only the QB in your head." Naruto's eyes widened fearfully again, and Sakura reached down to stroke his whiskers and calm him down. "My, this is working better than I thought. If this is all I needed to do to calm him down, I would have tried this years ago instead of punching him." When he was calm again, she continued once more, "But there is a way out, Naruto. The council denied you your heritage, and they will pay for it, but in order for you to claim it without trouble and get yourself out of their clutches, you will need to well." Naruto looked at her with confusion, and Sakura finished rapidly, fully blushing, "You will need to get married." His eyes widened and jaw dropped, before he managed to squeak out, "What did you say?" Sakura steeled herself, preparing for the backlash she would no doubt receive from him, though the blush refused to leave, and said more clearly, "You will need to get married. Today. In fact, right now." He continued to stare at her in shock, and she pulled out the marriage certificate for him to see, thankful that he was still restrained. She watched him read it, the shock on his growing, before he whispered, "Namikaze? I am related to the Yondaime? How?" Wondering if she needed to stroke his whiskers again but deciding to wait, she elaborated on this. "That's one of the things the council has denied you and kept quiet over the years, Naruto. We don't know how many people knew about it to begin with, but the fact remains that all of the council knew in the end. Naruto, you are the son of the Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze, and his wife, Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze." At first, Naruto just lay there, his mind trying to comprehend everything, but he then suddenly began thrashing against his bonds, his eyes wild yet distant, screaming out, "No! It's not true! It can't be true! I'm not!" Sakura, seeing nothing else available to her, did only one thing. A resounding smack was heard, as her palm connected with Naruto's cheek. Naruto laid completely still now, his eyes still widened in shock, completely speechless at Sakura's action. When he turned his head back to her, she was still standing there, a set look on her face while she tried to fight back tears. When he failed to say anything else, she managed to say without breaking down, "I know it's not fair. Your parents never have had to die for this village. Your heritage never should have been kept from you. You never should have been abused and hated by the same village that should have treated you like a hero for the burden you bear. But none of that shit matters now because it's already happened." A stray tear fell from her eye, and she turned to quickly wipe it away. "Damn it, Sakura! Get a hold of yourself. It won't help you or him if you break down right now." Steadying her breathing, she turned back to him. "What matters now is that we can still make this right. I know you don't trust me because of what I've done before. Oh yes. I know you're thinking about it right now. About how I used to be Sasuke's #1 fangirl. How I put you down when you were just trying to be nice to me. Hell, I'm amazed that Tsunade-sama and Jiraiya-san even approve of this whole thing, let alone allowing me to get this far. Yet the fact still remains that I'm more than willing to become your wife, because I know you better than anyone else in this village. More than Hinata. More than Ino. More than Tenten-san, Temari-san, or any other girl our age. In fact, dash." She choked back a sob and finally couldn't hold it anymore. As tears started to fall from her eyes, she gently sat on his bed and took his head in her hands before leaning in, saying softly, "In fact, I am not just willing to do this. I want this. I want this marriage to happen, because I want to show you there is still hope in your life, that there's still a chance for so many good things to happen to you. To know love, to live peacefully, to see how happy you can make others just by being yourself. And all you have to do for this to happen is just sign this paper. Do that, and I swear to you with my whole heart and soul that I will do everything in my power to make you happy. So please." Her head dropped, shielding her eyes from his view as she clenched them shut to try and stop crying. "Let me make things right." Silence reigned in the room, aside from the noises of Sakura's sobbing, and Naruto just stared at her. She was right, actually. He seriously first thought she was just doing this because she wanted the money and prestige of becoming the wife of the head of the Namikaze and Uzumaki families. After all, she had chased the Uchiha for so long because she wanted to be the wife of the calm and cool heir of the Uchiha clan, not because she loved and cared for him. That is, until she made him look into her eyes. Naruto had always been a good judge of who a person was just by looking into their eyes, since he had hidden himself behind a mask for so long. It was how he was able to figure out the people to avoid and the people who would actually interact with him on some level. It was how he survived for so long, finding the people who were willing to sell him goods at a more fair price, Though it was usually still somewhat inflated compared to those of normal people, the parents who didn't mind that he was nearby their kids so long as he didn't bother them, the ninja who didn't mind that he watched them train as long as he stayed quiet and not asked questions. When Naruto looked into Sakura's eyes, he was expecting to see a calculating and greedy look underneath all the tears as well as a certain disgust of what he held. He was instead shocked to see compassion, sadness, and even some slight desperation to keep him close to her. In fact, when he looked closely enough, he saw it. The very thing he had always wanted to see from her for years yet had always been denied. A deep caring that showed that she really gave a damn whether he lived or died. Sakura's sobs had subsided a little, though she was still sniffling, and she heard Naruto say, "Untie the restraints." Her head shot up, and she saw him staring at the restraints on his arms. When she was about to ask why, he then said, "I'll sign." Her eyes widened, and a wide smile slowly made its way onto her face before she squealed and hugged him. She turned to Tsunade and said, "Tsunade-sama, we need some witnesses for this. Ones we can trust completely." Tsunade had watched the scene with varying emotions throughout the whole thing. Yes, she would admit, she was still suspicious of Sakura's intentions regarding this whole thing, but she also knew that the sheer emotion the girl was showing couldn't be faked, even by the best. Seeing this girl try so hard to make her surrogate son happy actually filled her with hope that this was the best decision she could have ever made, and now that hope had become excitement. "I'll show you I've always cared, Naruto. You'll see." Aloud, she said, "Nico. Hibi." Two women, hearing their Hokage's call through special seals, shined into the room and saluted her. Tsunade turned to them and said, "I need the two of you to do something for me. It requires the utmost secrecy, and I demand your word that you will tell no one of the events that will happen. If you feel you cannot speak now. Otherwise, take off your masks and stand witness." The two women glanced at each other before both nodded and pulled off their masks to reveal Yugao Yuzuki and Anko Mitarashi, respectively. Tsunade then continued, "As you have given your consent by taking off your masks, you are now bound to secrecy. State your names and ranks, and be counted as witnesses to this joining." The purple-haired woman saluted to her Hokage. "Yugao Yuzuki, NBU Black Ops, currently designated as Nico. I stand witness." The snake Jounin grinned broadly and followed suit. "Anko Mitarashi, Special Interrogator for ANBU Torture and Investigation, currently designated as Hibi. I also stand witness." Tsunade smiled and walked over to the bedside before continuing, "Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, genin of Konoha and heir to the Namikaze and Uzumaki clans, do you take this young woman as your lawfully wedded wife?" Yugao's and Anko's eyes both widened at this, "to love and cherish in sickness and in health, until death separates you from this world?" Naruto glanced at Sakura, and she barely noticed the very faint smile on his lips before he said to Tsunade, "I do." Sakura barely held in her squeal of happiness. Tsunade smiled even more largely and said, "Sakura Haruno, genin of Konoha, do you take this young man as your husband and head of family, to love and cherish in sickness and in health, until death separates you from this world?" "I do," Sakura happily chirped out. Tsunade undid Naruto's restraints, allowing the boy to slowly sit up, and held out the marriage contract. "Sign this paper and make this union legal in eyes of Konoha." Naruto grabbed the offered pen and signed his full name Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze above Sakura's. Tsunade motioned to the two gawking women and said, "Yugao Yuzuki, Anko Mitarashi, will the two of you come forward and sign this as well, acknowledging that you have witnessed the willing union of this couple as husband and wife?" Both women nodded dumbly and signed their names in the witness box, and Tsunade snatched the pen from Anko's almost limp hand and signed her name as the officiator of the ceremony before pulling out the Hokage's stamp and almost hitting the paper with it with glee. "As the Hokage of Konoha, the true leader of this village, I declare this union to be valid and legal in the eyes of Konoha. So shall it be." She grabbed the paper and rolled it up before turning back to Naruto and Sakura, the cheeky smile still there. "Naruto and Sakura Uzumaki Namikaze, you are hereby declared as husband and wife. You may now kiss to seal this union." Naruto turned back to his now wedded wife, only to be thrown back as she launched herself at him and kissed him fully on the lips. There was a small burning on her shoulder as Kyuubi's seal set, but she ignored it as she focused on the kiss. Since Naruto was probably expecting a full make-out session without any real love, he was surprised to discover it to be a chaste yet passionate kiss, as Sakura poured her warmth and caring into it. He instantly closed his eyes and gently pulled her closer. Maybe this won't be so bad. After a few more seconds, Sakura pulled back, a blush firmly on her face, before leaning in towards his ear and whispering, "You know, this would have been the kiss you would have gotten if your stomach hadn't been bothering you that day." He looked at her with shocked eyes, wondering if whether or not she really knew it was him instead of Sasuke the day they graduated, and she pulled back while biting her tongue as she giggled. She then pushed him gently back onto the bed as she said, "Now, you lay here and get some more rest while I go with Tsunade-sama to get these filed. If you be good for the NBU and rest, I may just bring you some ramen from Isaraku's when I come back tonight. Okay?" Naruto nodded dumbly, and she hopped off the bed and followed Tsunade out the door. When the two women finally got back to the Hokage's office, they both collapsed into their chairs and sighed in exhaustion. Sakura then said, "Oh Kami, that was one of the most terrifying things I've ever done. For a minute there, I thought he was going to just reject me." Tsunade chuckled. "Just be glad he saw your side and judged you to be trustworthy. When that boy doesn't trust someone, he shuts up tighter than a clam. If he didn't trust you, we would have been back at square one." "Not necessarily." Both women jumped as Jiraiya climbed in quickly through the window. The two glared at him, but he just chuckled and continued on. "I actually had one of the best ideas come to me earlier, and it involved me going straight to the Fire Daimyo's palace and explaining the situation directly to him. He'll be here sometime in the late morning, a little before the council's meeting, and with him there, whether or not Naruto accepted the marriage, the kid would have still received his heritage. Still, better safe than sorry, and I'm glad that you and Naruto managed to have such a heartfelt time back there." Tsunade widened her eyes, and she growled out, "You were watching? Why didn't you come in and act as a witness then?" Jiraiya, rather than be deterred by her anger, raised a warning finger. Haim. You're not thinking straight. If my name shows up on that form, or Kakashi's or Shizen's for that matter, then the council will instantly smell a setup and try their hardest to repeal the marriage. The two ANBU summoned, on the other hand, are third parties who neither gain nor lose from this union. Sure, they're loyal to the Hokage, but it's more the position itself than the actual person, especially since you haven't been here long enough to instill that much loyalty towards you in them." He then scratched his head a little in embarrassment and shame. "Besides, I think my presence there would have deterred him from accepting, probably thinking that I was trying to pull something or that I coerced Sakura into doing it. As of now, I think the only authority figure he even trusts is you, Tsunade. Maybe Iruka as well, but I don't know. In any case, things are right on track." Tsunade nodded and leaned back into her chair as she thought more carefully. "Good. And the scroll of marriages?" At Sakura's confused look, Jiraiya decided to elaborate Tsunade's words. "Inside the Hokage Tower is a book that shows the names and dates of every marriage that is made legal. The seals on the marriage certificate not only allow the book to be self-updating, they show whether or not the person consents to the marriage itself. Sometimes, the seals sense when one or both of the couple are forced to sign the paper against their consent, and the paper then bursts into flames and voids the marriage. However, based on the witnesses present, the marriage may still be considered valid regardless of consent. Another reason I shouldn't have been there is the seals may have taken that into consideration, and the book would have listed that as well. In any case, where I'm going with this is that the book not only shows the married couple's names, the names of the witnesses, and whether or not there was consent, it also shows the time at which the certificate was signed. By utilizing a little loophole within the seals matrix that Minato had discovered but never got around to fixing, I was able to change the date and time to about 2 hours before Sasuke left the village. This makes it seem as if you were actually going home that night after signing the documents, but then ran into Sasuke and tried to prevent him from leaving. He then knocked you out and left you on the bench, where you were found the next morning by the gate guards as they changed shifts. Since your original testimony was never filed, it allows us to bend the story a little bit to suit our needs." Tsunade cackled a little and said, "Good. Very good, Jiraiya. And I trust you fixed the loophole?" Jiraiya smirked. "Fixed and reinforced. The scroll of marriages is now completely foolproof to everyone except myself. Only I now can break the matrix and re-establish the loophole, should we need it." "Wonderful." Tsunade pressed a button on the desk. "Shizen!" A few seconds passed before a rather hurriedly dressed Shizen burst through the door. As she tried to fix her clothing, much to the amusement of the rest of the people in the room, and cover the hickeys on her collarbone, she stammered out, "Why yes, Tsunade-sama?" Tsunade raised her eyebrow at her student and nonchalantly said, "Take the certificate down to the filing room and put it in the appropriate space, please." Shizen gingerly took the document, and replied as she started for the door, "Yes, Tsunade-sama." "Make sure the time and date on the stamp match the space you put it in." "Yes, Tsunade-sama." "And make sure it's alphabetical according to last name." "Yes, Tsunade-sama." "And make sure Kakashi uses protection." "Yes." Soon as Shizen froze before her hand opened the door, and she looked back with a heavily blushing face as she stammered out, I mean. Laughing at the woman's discomfort, she waved the poor girl out the room, something Shizen did with haste. Sakura got up from her chair and smoothed her clothes a little. Well, I'd better get home and grab a change of clothes before going to Ichiraku's. No doubt Naruto's hungry from refusing that hospital food. This caused a few more chuckles. Before she could head for the door, Jiraiya reached into his pocket, saying, "Wait. I have something for you too." Curious, she turned back to the man, and he handed a small box to her. When she opened it, she was shocked at what she saw. In that box sat a ring, a beautiful pure gold band with 3 flawless diamonds arranged in a diagonal line. It shimmered in the light, reflecting rainbows when the light hit, and she stared at it wordlessly. Her jaw dropped slightly and eyes widened. It was surely one of the most beautiful rings she had ever seen. She looked up to Jiraiya, who had now been joined by Tsunade, and he said encouragingly, "Go on. Put it on." Unsure, since the ring looked too big for her finger, she picked it up and slipped it onto her left-hand ring finger, and was promptly amazed when it sized itself to comfortably fit her. She looked back to Jiraiya, who smirked smugly. "I made a few modifications to it. The rings will automatically resize to fit your finger no matter what, and only you can pull it off. Now that the ring recognizes you, no one else can put it on without experiencing discomfort unless you willingly allow them to." Sakura looked at it again, shifting her hand around to catch it with various angles of light, and she said breathlessly, "It's beautiful. This must have cost you a fortune to get." Jiraiya's smile turned more sad, but it was Tsunade who said, "It used to be Kushina's. We retrieved it before her body was cremated, and Jiraiya carried it with him so that he could one day pass it on to Naruto to give to his wife. It's only right that it be given to you." Sakura nodded her head, tears pinpricking the corners of her eyes, but she rubbed them off and hugged the older man in thanks. When she finally let go, he then handed her another small box. "In this one is Minato's ring. It's inscribed with the same seals like yours." She nodded her head again and gently took the box, overcome with emotion to be a part of Naruto's heritage, and Jiraiya grinned more happily. "Now then, I believe you said you were off to get food for your husband. Best hop to it, before the boy decides to eat the bed." Sakura giggled a little as she walked out the door, closing it behind her. Naruto lay there on his bed for hours, just staring at the ceiling as his mind continued to process the day's events. All of this just seemed so surreal. Were the gods still messing with him, making him think he had a chance at a normal life before wrenching it away from him? Or were they trying to apologize, trying to make up for the cruelty he had to endure? Or maybe this has nothing to do with the gods, and it's just a series of events that have happened to you because they just did. Naruto scowled slightly. "Shut up, Kyubi. Oh, stop feeling so sorry for yourself. The way I see it, you've now got a chance to really show these people what you can do. And so what if the gods are actually taking pity on you? It's not as if they forced that girl to suddenly become your wife right out of the blue." "What do you mean?" Kyubi yawned a little, and Naruto could just picture her curled up into a big furry ball, her head resting on her tails. The image was actually kind of cute, now that he thought about it. "Why, thank you, Kit. That's so nice of you." She chuckled as Naruto's face turned a little red. "Don't forget we now share a mental link, which means I can see what you're thinking. Anyway, humans all have free will. That's what makes those terms fate and destiny to be such fickle things. The only fate they all share is to die someday, and a person may be destined to do something, but their destiny can still change based on their own choices. Needless to say, that girl cannot be forced to love you. She can be nudged in the right direction, but it's up to her to make the choice. Besides, she may not love you now, but she may choose to love you in time, if her current actions are anything to go by. Giving up your future just so another can have a chance at happiness? That's definitely not pity, Kit, that's love. Now hush. Your mate is on her way here, and I want to rest. I'm tired after saving you and helping that girl." Naruto lay there and processed her words. Sure, he may not have to like them, but they did make sense in a way. "Hey, Kyubi?" "Yeah?" Silence and then, "Thanks." He could imagine the Vulpine smiling softly before snuggling into her tails again and replying, "No problem, Kit." The door opened, jarring him out of his thoughts, and Sakura poked her head in, a small smile on her face. She looked at him slyly and said, "I've been hearing from the ANBU that you've been doing as I asked, Susu." She walked in fully and held up a carry-out box of Ichiraku's, causing the boy's stomach to growl loudly and Naruto to blush while Sakura laughed lightly at the sound. She set the box next to him and opened it, revealing 3 bowls of the stuff, before handing him the first, saying, "I got 3 different ones for you. The one you're holding is pork, and the other 2 are beef and chicken." She then bopped him very lightly on the head. "And make sure you eat all of it, including the vegetables. It's wasteful of both food and money to throw any of it away." Naruto grumbled slightly but began to dig in. After slurping a few noodles, relishing in their goodness as they entered his mouth, he swallowed and asked, "What about you? Haven't you eaten?" Sakura just grinned and held up a single container in one hand and a carry bag in the other. She set the bag on the ground and sat next to him, her bowl and chopsticks in her hands. They sat there in peaceful silence, aside from the slurping, and both thought after a few minutes, "This is nice." By the time Sakura had finished her bowl, and it was rather large too, she must have been more hungry than she thought. Naruto had finished his 3 and placed his bowls into the box. Placing hers beside them, she rose from the bed and grabbed the bag, confusing Naruto a little until she opened it. Then he just blushed, as it contained her clothes, and he could see a pair of her panties near the top of the bag. A chuckle in his head, and then, pervert. He blushed a little more, but proudly thought, "There's nothing wrong with lusting over my wife a little. Oh Kami, Sakura's my wife. My wife." He blushed even harder, starting to resemble a ripe tomato, and Kyubi just laughed harder. Sakura pulled out her night clothes and set them aside, but she then froze as a thought came into mind. Narrowing her eyes, she looked around the room and growled out, "If there are any male ANBU in this room, leave before I kill you." 3 shunshins were felt as the ANBU fled the room in fear. She chuckled a little, as did the 3 female ANBU, and undid her cheongsam before shimmying out of her biker shorts. Naruto tried to not stare much, but he couldn't resist watching her lithe form dress for the night. Her aren't that big, but Kami, they're perfect on her. She may not look it, but she's well proportioned underneath those clothes. She's like a pink-haired goddess. My goddess. Kyubi laughed again at the boy's naivete. Thankful she hadn't changed her underwear, Naruto didn't think he could handle that much without being blown back from the inevitable nosebleed geyser. She stepped into a pair of navy shorts and was about to put on her top, when she remembered her remaining male audience. Blushing a little, she froze as she stamped down her normal reaction to perverts, thinking, "He's my husband now. It's going to be normal for us to see each other naked. Oh Kami! He's going to be seeing me naked." Kyubi, hearing the girl's thoughts from the seal, couldn't stop laughing and was now rolling around on the ground, wheezing out, "Oh please. Make it stop. This is just too much." Nevertheless, a more playful side of her came into play as she thought, "Wheelio, I might as well have fun with this." Smirking, she slowly turned her head to Naruto and said seductively, "Like what you see, dearest?" His nosebleed nearly shot him into the wall, but thankfully, he just shot back into the bed, staring up at the ceiling with wide eyes and a hand clamped over his nose. In the Hokage's office, back in the tower, Tsunade was having a hard time breathing as she clutched her sides from laughing so hard, while Jiraiya just fell to the floor and rolled around in his own laughter. Sakura giggled at her husband's reaction and pulled on the oversized white t-shirt before heading over to the bed. Grinning down at him, she asked, "Feeling alright, Naruto-kun?" Naruto, his hand still clamped over his nose, just looked away and growled out, "Vixen." Sakura laughed and slipped under the sheets of the bed. When Naruto snapped his head back to her, she just lowered his hand and placed a finger on his lips, saying, "Just because we can't have sex until I'm 14 doesn't mean I shouldn't share your bed. It is my duty to be near you, after all." Not really seeing any problem with this, he held back any comments and just wrapped an arm around her thin frame before closing his eyes. As she snuggled into his body, "He's so warm," either could help but think as they drifted off to sleep. "I don't know why, but this feels so right." Naruto awoke with a small start, his mind trying to readjust from the events of the other day. Where am I? Oh yeah, that's right. Still in the hospital room. Have to admit though, that had to have been one of the craziest dreams I've ever experienced. I mean, seriously, what are the odds that Sakura would marry me? Pfft, yeah right? That girl has her head so far up that bastard Uchiha's ass, she can look out his mouth when he speaks. And me being the heir of the Yondaime? That's ridicule. A small mew of sleepy displeasure sounded to his side, and Naruto glanced down and nearly jumped out of the bed, barely holding in the startled yell. There, in all her snoozing glory, was Sakura Haruno, or should he say, Sakura Uzumaki Namikaze, his new wife. He stared at her wide-eyed with disbelief for a few minutes, his mouth opening and closing but no words coming out, until he eventually just turned his head back towards the ceiling and stared at it, his body completely still now. How the hell had any of this happened? 1 minute, he tries to kill himself, and the next thing he knows, he's now married to a girl that he had always wished for but could never have. It was almost like one of those bad romance novels where the hero tries to show his love for the heroine but fails spectacularly and gets driven to despair before attempting suicide, only for the heroine to conveniently remember that deep down she's always had a burning passion for him and saves him from that same despair before the two of them finally get together and have dirty, animalistic sex. Yep, exactly like a romance novel, except without the animalistic sex, which is a shame because that's the best part, too. This thought saddened him a little, and even though he couldn't see them, he knew his eyes were reflecting the deadness within his own heart. He knew that Sakura didn't love him. She only did this because she wanted to try and keep him alive. Yet, at the same time, her words last night rang through his ears. I swear to you I will do everything in my power to make you happy. Despite his suspicions, he actually dared to put his hope into her words. For so long, he had wanted this, wanted someone who would care at least a little about him, yet now that it had happened, he found himself unable to believe it. He looked at Sakura again, this time drinking in her image with his greedy eyes, trying to commit it all to memory in case this all proved to be a dream after all. Her slim body had pressed up against him tightly, though not so tight that it was uncomfortable, and her shoulder-length hair had fanned out a little on the bed, forming a small pink halo around her head. She had a small smile on her face, one that showed she was comfortable, while her right hand was laying lightly on his chest. Truly, she was now the goddess he had always viewed her as, and he hoped that at the very least Cammy would allow this memory to stay with him forever. No doubting sensing that he was up, Sakura's eyelids fluttered open, allowing her to groggily take in the room around her, before slowly turning her head to look at him. The smile stayed on her face as she leaned towards him and whispered, "Good morning, husband," before kissing him lightly on the lips. She then rested her head on his chest, her hand idly twirling on it while listening to his steady heartbeat. It felt soothing to her, the rhythmic beating pulsing in her ear, and she was tempted to tap her fingers gently in sync with it. Suddenly, there was a small knock on the door, and Sakura groaned lightly before calling out, "Who is it?" The door opened, allowing Nico's head to pop in and say, "Sakura-san, Hokage-dano would like to speak with you in her office. It's about the council meeting today." Sakura groaned a little more before lightly nodding her head and answering, "Fine. Let her know I'll be there as soon as I shower and change." Nico nodded and closed the door behind her. Yawning a little as she sat up and rubbing her eyes, she asked Naruto, "Do you want me to grab you some food from the cafeteria? It might be a while before the nurses bring you breakfast." Naruto shook his head and closed his eyes. "No. That's okay. I'm not all that hungry yet." Sakura smirked and swooped towards him to kiss him fully on the lips again before giggling at his shocked expression. "Poor boy. He just doesn't know how to take me finally kissing him." She then got onto her feet and grabbed the carry bag, heading towards the bathroom and locking the door behind her. She looked closely into the mirror for a few seconds, checking her skin for any spots or blotches, before turning on the shower. After getting the temperature to how she wanted, she stripped out of her sleepwear and stepped under the water. She let it beat onto her skin for a little bit, her mind still trying to process everything in the last 24 hours. She was glad she was able to help Naruto with this. He would now be able to have his chance at happiness. It was worrisome about how the village was going to take to him being the Namake's heir, though. Just because he attempted suicide in the middle of the village square wasn't going to be what brought everyone to their senses, and all that would really change is everyone trying to kiss up to Naruto now that Sasuke was gone. "Oh Cammy. Sasuke." She froze, soaping herself as her heart clenched with an almost terrible pain. Sure, she was willing to help Naruto keep his happiness, but the extent of her actions had only hit her fully now as she thought of the traitorous Nin. She suddenly found it difficult to breathe, and she leaned against the shower wall while trying to wait for the emotional pain to stop. "Why, Sasuke? I gave you everything except my own virginity, and I think even that wouldn't have been enough for you, would it? I loved you so much. I just wanted to see you smile with happiness for once, for you to let go of the death of your clan, but no matter how hard we tried, you were always like ice to us. I wanted to help you so badly, but you only saw me as weak, inconsequential, not worthy of your time. Why, Sasuke? Why didn't you let any of us in? Why did you have to leave?" Tears falling freely down her cheeks, Sakura dropped to her knees and sobbed quietly, as her heart wrenched in her chest. The fire daimyo peeked out of his carriage window as they crested a large hill. Down below, he could see Konoha, the shinobi village that was supposed to be one of the best within all the elemental nations. Granted, all daimyos believed their village to be the best except for the wind daimyo, though personally, he wondered if there was something mentally wrong with that man. What kind of idiot hinders their own shinobi forces, one of the three main branches of his country's army? The difference here was that the fire daimyo knew his was one of the top two, if not number one. Konoha had survived 3 shinobi wars and a rather large-scale invasion, and the village had always stood intact. In fact, It was because of the ninja being so successful in those wars that the daimyo's family had received several annexes to Hai no Kuni. Still, the major word in all of this was suppose the daimyo had been aware that some things had been slipping since the end of the Third Shinobi War, but he had never realized that things had gotten this bad. Sarutobi had assured him that things were going smoothly, but it seems that his definition of smooth didn't match the daimyo's. Honestly, what was the man thinking, hiding the boy's heritage? IWA wouldn't have been stupid enough to waste resources to go after one little boy, and besides, Minato's actions in the last war were just that, acts of war. It's not like when the fighting ended, he decided to take out a personal vendetta against all IWA shinobi, and they know it. They accepted it as it was and just moved on, though if they came across Minato out in the open, they probably would have tried their hands and killed him if they could. No, I don't know Sarutobi's reasoning for this, but he was either becoming too senile, had some sort of ulterior motive in all this, or made an honest error in judgment that he later came to regret. I'm just afraid to know which is true. Leaning his head out the window, his commander silently riding up alongside the carriage to see what was wrong, the daimyo said, "See if you can coax a little more speed out. The meeting starts at 10, so I intend to be there at 9. The commander nodded his head and rode forward, barking out orders to pick up the pace, and the daimyo leaned back into his chair, thinking, Minato, Kushina, you once put your faith in me and helped me however you could. Let me return the favor by helping your son. She didn't know how long she had been laying there in the shower. The water was still on and still hot, but she had fallen to the floor some time ago in her grief and didn't bother getting up. Had it only been seconds? Minutes? It couldn't have been long. The ANBU would have dragged her off to Tsunade if it was. But every second felt like an hour. A minute, an eternity. The pain just felt too much to her, as she felt a part of herself shatter further and further. Knowing she only had a little bit of time left, she forced herself back onto her feet and finished her cleansing rituals before finally turning off the water. She quickly dried herself and slipped on her clothes. She then turned to the mirror and looked herself over. Her eyes were a little puffy and red from the crying, but thankfully she had some makeup in her bag that could help cover that up. I can't let Naruto see me like this. If he knows I've been crying about Sasuke, he'll think I'll never change no matter what I do. Best to try and cover it up. Is that really going to solve the problem? This isn't something that's just skin deep, you know. Sakura jumped and yelped, before looking around the room quickly to make sure she was alone. Kubidano? Right in one. I'm amazed you didn't react more strongly. Then again, having a separate personality inside your head must make that easier to adjust. Sakura rolled her eyes a little and went back to her makeup. No offense, Kubidano, but is there a point in this? I need to hurry. Would have probably had more time if you hadn't wasted it mourning the defection of a traitor. Look, I get it, alright? You're young and you've suffered a pretty severe case of heartbreak, more severe than many other your age at least. But hiding this is not going to help anyone, especially not the kid. If he suspects that you're hiding something, his trust in you will be shattered, and I'll be starting again at square zero, now married to a man who probably wouldn't be able to stand being in the same room with me. I get it. Look, let me deal with my own problems with Sasuke, and you worry about keeping an eye on our boy. Telling him about any of this is going to do more harm than good right now. I'll be fine, I promise. Silence, and then a sigh. Fine, do as you wish, but remember our deal. Hurt the kid, and you will suffer. Don't forget that. Sakura lowered her head before discreetly nodding. I know. Looking back into the mirror, she appeared satisfied with her work before putting on a smile, thinking to herself, if I worry him, then he'll fret. He is still Naruto after all, no matter what mood he's in. That he is. Sakura turned and opened the door to enter the room, where she then placed the bag near the room's entrance and walked over to her husband. He appeared to be dozing slightly but had roused when he heard her leave the bathroom. She approached his bedside and leaned down to gently place her lips on his. When she looked back into his eyes, she raised a hand and gently stroked his whiskers, eliciting a purr. She suppressed her giggle, opting for a small widening in her smile, and said lowly, I'll hopefully be back for lunch. If I don't make it back in time, I'll ask Tsunade if she can have some and bring some ramen for you. Okay? He nodded slightly, and Sakura was elated to see the smallest of smiles tugging at his lips. Happy she might be making progress, she gave him another quick kiss and promptly left the room. Outside, she turned and nodded to Nico, who laid a hand on her shoulder and said, Tsunade-dano requests you come the quickest way possible, so I'll be taking you via Shunshin. Are you ready? Sakura nodded, and a poof of smoke later they were gone. When Sakura reappeared a couple seconds later, she arrived to the sight of Tsunade sitting at her desk, going through various papers that would no doubt help Naruto attain his birthright. Nico saluted and said, Hokage Dano, I have brought Sakura-san as requested. Tsunade glanced up from her shuffling and nodded her head. Good, Nico. Return to your post. Another salute and then, ma'am. The Anbu-shun shined away, leaving the two women in the room. As Tsunade continued her shuffling, Sakura chose to take a seat in front of the desk and let the older woman make the first move. She still wasn't feeling all that right since the shower, and she didn't want to screw anything up by blurting something unnecessary out. Cammy only knows she had enough anxiety as it was. Tsunade seemed to have found everything in order, because she sighed contentedly and leaned back into her chair, regarding the girl before her. She smiled a little and said, An ANBU I had set to watch the road from the capital just sent me a missive. The daimyo has decided to arrive early, possibly to help throw the council off guard. If they try to meet without requesting his presence, then it will be considered an insult to his name, and could lead to their executions, and he'll meet with them when he's good and ready. Not even the council is stupid enough to try the patience of the fire daimyo. We could even go so far as to have them sitting on their heels for weeks regarding this, though that would give them a chance to build their case against Naruto as well. Sakura returned the smile and asked, So what do we do now, Tsunade-dano? For now we wait. The fire daimyo will be approaching the town gates within 20 minutes. I'll then leave to go and meet with him to bring him back to my office. While the council scrambles in a panic to try and piece together their shoddy evidence, Jiraiya and I will present the daimyo with our findings as well as introduce you to him as Naruto's wife. He'll listen to our stories before calling to convene the meeting. The council may try to bluster their way into coaxing the daimyo to their point of view, but it won't get far. What do you need me to do? The timing of this is crucial for you, Sakura. When I counter their claims to have Naruto removed from the ranks by saying that he is the dual heir of two well-respected shinobi clans, they will try and go for the puppet heir route and say that it's impossible for Naruto to be Minato's and Kushina's child. At that moment, you must call for the independent party to perform the blood tests to determine his heritage. If the council is allowed to build up enough steam, it will be hard to shut them down and get anything done, and the moment they discover the existence of these documents, you can bet they will do everything they can to destroy them if they get the chance. Sakura nodded, and Tsunade stood and walked around her desk. Gesturing for the girl to stand, she looked at her with a critical eye, before smiling broadly and winking at her. You know, you are eerily similar to my own size back when I was your age. I happen to have a kimono I never got around to using way back when, and we have just enough time to see if it fits. Placing a hand on the girl's shoulder, the two shun shined away. Does anyone have any idea what's going on? Ino's question was met with negatives from everyone else from the now Konoha 11, formerly 12, that were currently not in the hospital or currently indisposed with personal problems. They didn't know why everyone had been called to the Hokage Tower, or why the council members were currently running around the village in a panic like they were about to die. Judging by their reactions, you would have thought that Orochimaru had launched another attack or the Kyuubi had returned. Whatever it was coming to this village, and fast. All the ninja had been gathered, but it was noticeable that the rest of Team 7 was strangely absent. To be honest, Ino hadn't seen either Sakura or Naruto since before Sasuke defected, and no matter where she looked, it was as if the two of them had vanished from the face of the planet. Still, she tried to not pry too much, since she figured the two of them were probably hurting from their teammates' betrayal. Cammy only knows how she herself would feel if either Chuji or Shikamaru had decided to betray their village. Speaking of Shikamaru, he had been rather quiet since his meeting in the Hokage's office. He just couldn't get that image of Naruto out of his head, sitting there in the rain and laughing like a lunatic. As if his first high-rank mission hadn't ended badly enough with almost all of his team nearly dead, he now had to deal with driving one of his squad members to insanity by making him fight his own best friend. He later found himself standing amongst the crowd in bone-chilling shock as he watched the other boy try to kill himself, and be saved by the very thing he was hated for. He found out afterward he was the only one in his age group who had watched the altercation, though he didn't doubt that there were a few younger children in the crowd who were going to be scarred for life. However, despite wanting all this to change for the better, he knew that this wouldn't have happened any other way. Sooner or later, Naruto would have broken down, that much was certain. It was only a question of when it would happen. The rest were completely silent, confused by what was going on but not having any real clue of what just happened within the last 48 hours. Hinata was twiddling her fingers a little as she glanced around, no doubt looking for her crush and hoping this didn't have anything to do with him. Shino, as always, was stoically silent, not letting any emotion show as he patiently waited for whatever to come. Tenten was also patiently silent, though her twiddling with a kunai in her hands showed her nervousness, while Lee seemed to be bracing himself for another battle. Both had been on edge since Niji had been brought back to the village near death, though thankfully the worst was over for him and was recovering nicely in the hospital with the others. Suddenly, A carriage bearing the fire daimyo's banner strolled into the plaza, several samurai surrounding it while looking for all threats. Tenten had hastily tucked the kunai away before they saw it. It came to a stop outside the entrance of the tower, and the council was rushing towards it, nearly tripping over themselves in their haste, though they dared not get too close for fear of being seen as too forward with their lord. A footman hopped down from the driver's seat and placed a small step in front of the door as it opened. There stood Katsuro Iogai, the 12th fire daimyo since Hai no Kuni's founding many years ago, gazing around the village with what seemed to be slightly narrowed eyes. Some people gulped quietly. Whatever was going on, the daimyo was not pleased. The man finally stepped down onto the carpet laid before him, and before he said anything, a small gust of wind and leaves blew a few feet in front of him, revealing two people. Tsunade had opted to put on her full Hokage regalia. The clothes robes she wore were new, made especially for her upon her appointment to Hokage, and they were somewhat similar to the Sandame's, though they were a little more form-fitting than his. The diamond-shaped hat sat proudly on her head, and her eyes were bright as she smirked a little towards the fire daimyo. It was other person that blew some people's breath away. The kimono Tsunade had picked for Sakura, found in a box in Tsunade's old home with stasis seals to keep it in the best condition despite all the time that passed, was a red base with pink blossom petals traveling from the bottom hem towards her shoulders as if they had been caught in a breeze, tied together with a dark blue butterfly obi sash with red cord. The sleeves were a little long, but not long enough to signify Sakura as a young woman with no attachments, and her hands were clasped in front of her, right hand over left. She only had a little makeup on, just enough to enhance her natural beauty, and her shoulder-length hair had been pulled up into a short ponytail, held up by two hairpins crossed together with pearls on their ends. She was stunningly beautiful, and the girl held her head up high as she gazed at the daimyo. Ino couldn't hold her jaw up, and she knew that a few others around her were mimicking or close to mimicking her as they stared at the girl. Is that really Sakura? What's she doing with the Hokage? Why is she dressed up like some nobleman's wife? Oh my Kami! Don't tell me that in her sorrow of losing Sasuke, she's now offering herself to. Wherever Ino's thoughts were going were interrupted as Tsunade and Sakura walked up to the man, and Tsunade bowed to him, saying, "My lord, you honor our village with your presence. I wish to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come here." The man smiled broadly, and he waved a hand towards her in an almost flippant manner, saying, "Think nothing of it, Tsunade. I actually would have been quite offended if you hadn't informed me of this meeting. I must check up on my Hokage and see how she is doing, after all." He then turned his eyes to Sakura. "And who might you be, my dear? An apprentice of Tsunade's?" Sakura glanced at Tsunade and asked something with her eyes, to which Tsunade subtly shook her head, her own eyes saying, "Not yet." Sakura nodded in return and smiled respectfully at Katsuro. The whole exchange had taken place within 1 second. Sakura bowed deeply to the man and replied, "My lord, my name is Sakura. As to my status, that is one of the minor things Tsunade wishes to discuss with you. For now, I would say I'm on a probationary period of medical apprenticeship." Tsunade smugly smiled as she glanced back quickly. Good girl. Only say enough to keep him interested. Katsuro laughed a little and said, "Well then? This is something I must hear. Shall we retire to your office, Tsunade?" The woman bowed again before gesturing towards the tower. "Of course, my lord. If it would please you to follow me?" Before the three could get very far towards the building, one of the council members stepped forward cautiously and almost whimpered out, But my lord, what of the meeting?" They stopped, and Katsuro's eyes turned ice cold as he stared at the impudent man. "Then you can save me time having to find you and go seat yourselves inside the room with some of my samurai. They will ensure that you don't communicate with each other or anyone else until I'm ready to see you." The man paled a little, and Danzo palmed his face quickly, thinking, "Idiot," while the clan heads just glared at the council member for wasting their time to sit in a room. Before they could start heading for the door, though, the fire daimyo said as he started for the tower again, "Oh, and if any of you do try to communicate, it will be seen as treason, and you'll be executed." This time, the rest of the council joined in the murderous glares, and the man wet himself in response. As both Sakura and Tsunade giggled silently at the sight, they followed Katsuro into the building. The council followed them a few seconds later. Ino and the rest of the genin could only stare at the doors, all of them thinking the same thing. What the hell is going on? As the three people seated themselves in the Hokage's office, Tsunade looked to Shizen, standing near the door, and said, "Shizen, be a dear and bring us some tea, please. When you've brought it, make sure we are not disturbed by anyone, not even for emergencies." Shizen nodded her head and left to do her tasks, and Katsuro leaned back into his chair. "All right, Tsunade. Jiraiya told me a little of what's going on, but now I need the full story. First off, Is this Naruto Uzumaki really Minato's and Kushina's son? Tsunade pulled out a scroll and summoned the required papers before handing him Naruto's birth certificate. Yes. All of Konoha had been caught up in the confusion of the Kyuubi attack, but Minato made sure to give Jiraiya all the appropriate paperwork before rushing out to join the battle. Both Minato's and Kushina's blood were applied to the seals on this. As per Konoha medical laws, we also have vials of their blood sealed in a secret location to ensure the validity of any future claims. The daimyo raised his hand. No need to bring those out. Minato and I were very good friends in both our business and personal lives back when he was alive. When Kushina was pregnant, he gave me a scroll containing their blood samples as well. I think he was planning for a scenario where this might happen and their vials had become compromised. Tsunade raised her eyebrow and crossed her hands in front of her. I trust you brought them with you. He pulled a scroll out of his robes, grinning a little. Of course. Tsunade nodded. Good. If the independent party in this already has vials of their blood, then the council can't claim we provided faulty samples. Katsuro gave a confused frown. Have things really gotten that bad? Tsunade sighed and leaned back into her chair while rubbing her forehead. They're not just bad, my lord. They're at the absolute worst right now. By the time Sensei retook the Hokage position, the council had given themselves too much power to rule and made him into more of a figurehead. I honestly think he wanted to keep Naruto's condition as a Jinchuriki a secret from the public like with Kushina. Sakura's eyes widened at this information, but Tsunade didn't notice and pressed on. But the council wanted a scapegoat for everything and leaked his status to the public. Sensei tried to stem the tide by making it illegal to speak of Naruto being Kyuubi's jailer, but the damage had already been done. The window opened, and Jiraiya quickly stepped into the room and took up the conversation. What's even worse about it is that I think Sensei really wanted to tell everyone just who Naruto was, but no one at the time would have believed him since they already had their misconceptions firmly in place. He bowed to the man quickly. I apologize for being late. The Toads demanded that I fill them in with the situation with Naruto after I mentioned it to them yesterday. Katsuro nodded slowly in understanding before asking, and how did they take the news? Jiraiya sighed and shook his head. Not well, my lord. Not well at all. In fact, they're furious with Konoha right now. Minato and Kushina were held with the highest regard amongst them, and to hear that their son was abused has a few of the more hot-headed ones gearing up for war. Gamabunta had always wondered why the kid hadn't summoned him before and had thought at first he was simply being a disrespectful brat, but now he's about ready to drown this village in oil before lighting it ablaze. I only just barely managed to talk them down from it by saying you were looking into it, and would demand justice. But if things don't go as they wish today, then everyone here had better be prepared to fight for their lives. He waved his hand nonchalantly, and sighed as he sat down. Still, we'll get to that bridge soon enough. In any case, Konoha wouldn't have granted Naruto his inheritance because they would have been in denial, thinking there's no way Minato would seal Kyuubi into his own son. Evidently, saviors don't seal malicious beasts into their children's bellies. I think that the council only gave Naruto the name Uzumaki was more out of spite for the Yuzuru they saw Kushina as. Not too many people were really happy when Minato chose to marry her instead of a proper or in other words, Konoha girl. Giving the person they hated her name seemed to be a colossal joke to them, and gave them a chance to spit on her memory as well. He laughed derisively. Too bad their little joke is going to bite them back in the worst ways imaginable. The daimyo smirked and nodded his head. Indeed. He then turned to the silent Sakura and said, And what of you, Sakura-chan? What is your role in all of this? Sakura shifted her gaze to Tsunade quickly, who nodded her head, before looking fully at the man and answering, Katsuro-sama, I am Naruto's teammate on Team 7 and a friend of his, and now I am his legal wife. Katsuro raised an eyebrow at her but said nothing, allowing the girl to bow to him and continue. My full name now is Sakura Uzumaki Namikaze, formerly Haruno. The daimyo leaned back into his chair, his eyebrow never changing its position, as he continued to stare at the girl. Really? And for how long have the two of you been married? Sakura bowed her head a little in respect. Only for a few days, my lord. I see. He turned to the two Sannin. Tsunade-san, Jiraiya-san, why don't the two of you go and check on that tea? It seems Shizen-san has gone missing with it, and I wish to quickly discuss something with Sakura here in private before we go any further. The two of them looked at each other with worried glances, but they nodded their heads anyway and walked out of the door, Tsunade giving Sakura's shoulder a comforting squeeze as she passed. When the door clicked shut, the daimyo turned back to the now nervous girl and said gently, What is really going on here, Sakura-san? Sakura's gaze snapped back up to him, and she stammered out, And my lord? Katsuro smiled a little before continuing, You may not have intended to, But you show a slight hesitancy when you mentioned your new last name, and it wasn't because of unfamiliarity. Naruto-san did agree to this of his own free will, did he not? Yes, Katsuro-sama. Then what is bothering you right now? You have this small aura of guilt around you, and it is affecting your actions. Sakura turned her head, unable to look at him fully in the eye. Katsuro continued gently, there was another boy, wasn't there? She nodded, albeit hesitantly. Who? She took a deep breath, trying to control herself, before she answered, Sasuke Uchiha. He was our third teammate on Team 7. Ah, yes. The last Uchiha of Konoha. Some of the more sycophantic ninja praised the boy for his skills, recommending that he one day become one of my guardian ninja. Tell me, did you love him? Sakura was about to nod again, but she froze for a second before answering, I did, or at least I thought I did. Katsuro's eyebrow raised again. Oh? Tell me. Sakura shook her head in confusion. I don't know anymore. Back when we were children, I always dreamed of one day being his wife. For years I tried to better myself, tried to get him to notice me, but… Katsuro nodded sympathetically. Nothing ever changed. He could never move on, could he? Sakura shook her head again. No, he couldn't. And yet despite all this, despite the fact that he ignored you and no doubt belittled you, despite the fact that he even went so far as to turn traitor for his own ambitions, you still have feelings for him, don't you? Yes, no, I don't know. Sakura grabbed her head and hunched over, her eyes wide and fearful. I just don't know anymore. I don't know what to feel, what to say, what to do. I just want to make things better. I want Naruto to be whole again. I want to bring Sasuke back. I want my team back together. I want my life to stop spinning out of my control and let me fix it for once. Katsuro let the girl be for a little bit, allowing her to suck in a few raspy breaths to stop herself from breaking down. When she finally seemed like she was under control, he then gently asked, And Naruto? You've been having strange feelings for him as well, haven't you? Feelings that are confusing you? Sakura just nodded a little, her hands slowly loosening their grip. Katsuro nodded again and sat there in silence. After a few minutes he sighed and said, Then I cannot allow this to go on. Sakura's head shot up, and she stared at the man in shock. I cannot willingly walk into that meeting room, Katsuro continued, and watch you do this without resolving your own issues. In the end, it would all be meaningless. Sakura nodded and stared at the ring on her finger in sadness. Then what can I do? Katsuro leaned forward and rested a hand gently onto her shoulder, making her look at him again. One broken person cannot fix another, Sakura-chan. In order for you to help Naruto, you must be willing to move on from your past self. Go to him. Tell him all that is really bothering you. If you find yourself unable to go on before or after you do so, then say the word and I can quietly dissolve the marriage between you two. No one would have to know about it, since you haven't told anyone, and the two of you could go on with your lives as you see fit. If you still continue on this path, then at least you can do it with your head held high, and no regrets holding you down. Sakura gazed her ring, the ring that held her promise to Naruto as his wife, and thought, Can I really do this? Am I really willing to go on like this, and put the both of us through this? What about Naruto? What about his feelings? Could I really just let him know, and wind up crushing him as a result? She then heard her inner self gently ask, Maybe. But don't you think he at least deserves the chance to know? People have lied to him all his life. Don't you think that for once, he would like to hear the truth? Sakura smiled gently and nodded her head a little before rising to her feet. She bowed deeply to the man and said, My lord, please excuse me. I must tend to something. When he smiled and nodded in response, Sakura turned and said, Nico. Said Anbu Shun shined into the room, and Sakura asked, Will you please take me to my husband? There's something I need to resolve before I go to the meeting. Nico nodded her head and gently laid a hand on the girl's shoulder before Shun shining the two of them away. It was at this moment, Tsunade and Jiraiya walked back into the room, Shizen in tow with the tea, and Tsunade asked, What happened to Sakura? Where did she go? Katsuro simply smiled again and motioned for Shizen to bring the tea. She went to go find her answers. The two of them appeared right outside Naruto's room, and Sakura steadied herself with a deep breath before turning to the NBU. Can you please allow us to talk alone? Nico nodded her head and disappeared, and Sakura gently knocked on the door and opened it. She was treated to the sight of Naruto laying on his side, a scroll in one hand and his head resting in the other, and he looked up as she came in. His eyes traveled a little over her body, taking in the sight of her, and she smiled a little before turning slowly from side to side to give him a better look. Do you like the kimono Tsunade-dano gave me? I was worried I wouldn't fit in it. Naruto blushed a little and turned his head while clearing his throat. Yeah, sure, it looks lovely on you. She giggled slightly, but it didn't last long before her face fell a little. She bowed her head and said, Naruto, I need to speak with you regarding, well, everything, I guess. Confused, Naruto sat up and motioned for her to take a seat on the side of the bed, which she did before staring at her hands. Her back was turned to him, and he wondered what was wrong with her, before she said, Naruto, am I really doing the right thing? Is shackling you to me really going to help you find happiness again? Am I even capable of showing you that happiness? Naruto became even more confused but allowed her to continue. Sakura raised her head and stared off into space as she continued, I'm so confused, Naruto. I have had always loved Sasuke. Even after he betrayed us, I still would have given my heart to him. I would have followed him in becoming a missing nin if it meant he would return these feelings. Yet when I saw you give in to your despair, something inside of me broke. Naruto's eyes were starting to lose their light, as he felt those feelings of betrayal creep up on him. Suddenly, he felt like a fool for believing that she was going to change, but then again, did he really expect her to just switch feelings like that? Before he could say anything though, Sakura shook her head. No. That's a lie. I'm not confused. I'm afraid. I'm afraid that all of my feelings for everyone are just myself trying to fix everything around me and make it all into my perfect little world. When I had my crush on Sasuke, I wanted to fix him and make him smile for me with love and kindness. I wanted to be the light in his world of darkness, to be the thing that he would love and adore above all else. But then, when I saw you finally give in to your grief and pain, it was suddenly you I wanted to fix. It was you I wanted to see happy. It was your smile I wanted to fill. It was your darkness I wanted to light. The two of you had become these little birds with broken wings, and I wanted to take care of you so that I could see you fly. She lifted her legs from the ground and hugged them close to her, tears welling at the corners of her eyes as she lowered her head onto her knees. I'm afraid that everything will just be a lie, and that one day I'll wake up and find that I actually never truly cared. I'm afraid that, after everything I've done, I'll just find myself alone. I'm afraid that I'll just hurt everyone, no matter how much help I give, and I'll just make everything worse. Naruto sat there in silence for a few minutes. It's not as if she was really rejecting him. After all, he knew she didn't really love him like she did Sasuke. But to go this far just so that she would see him happy? That didn't make sense in the slightest, rebound crush or not. Sakura just sat there, her head down, as she waited for him to tell her to call it off. After all, who would want to stay married to someone who might not care for him no matter how much time passes? She was surprised, though, when she heard him shuffle closer to her side, and she lifted her head in confusion to see him sitting right beside her, his empty eyes staring at the wall. He was silent for a moment before saying, Back when we were at the academy, I had always known you were different. You were one of the few kids in class who wasn't outright mean to me, who was willing to help me get better. Whenever I had questions about the theory or something, you were one of the few people who would give me a straight answer unless somehow Sasuke was involved, which you would then either ignore me or punch me for irritating you. Sakura blushed in embarrassment, but she allowed the boy to continue on. As the years went by, I kept on trying, despite everyone telling me to give up, because I wanted to show you that your help wasn't wasted. Despite the fact that the teachers always sabotaged me and tried to see me fail, as well as the fact that I was never the smartest of the group, I always tried to work my hardest so that one day I could walk up to you and prove to you that I was worth the help you gave. When we made it onto a team, I was happy because it meant I could finally show you how all the hard work paid off, and maybe, just maybe, you would turn your gaze to me for once. Of course, Sasuke was still the center of your world, but you still were willing to help me succeed even when others didn't care. Sakura smiled a little now but still remained silent, and Naruto then fell back onto his back, staring now at the ceiling while Sakura laid down next to him. You're afraid that your feelings are all fake, but I think that's bull. When you made me look into your eyes the other day, I saw something deep down inside of you that intrigued me enough to take your offer of marriage. Sakura leaned onto her left arm as she trailed her right hand over his heart, and asked quietly, What did you see? He turned his eyes to her and cupped her cheek with his hand. That you really care about me. You actually care enough about me that you're willing to face the discrimination and hatred of being my wife, no matter how high our titles will be, and that kind of caring actually matters to me more than anything in the world. Sure, you don't love me like you do Sasuke, but... Whatever else he was going to say was cut off as Sakura couldn't hold back any longer and pressed her lips to his. A few tears poured out of her eyes, but she ignored them, as she felt her body be filled with a warmth she had never felt before. She kissed a little bit more, gently nibbling on his lower lip, before pulling back and giving him a watery smile. You're wrong, Naruto. You are so wrong. He looked at her with confusion, and she giggled a little at the sight before continuing, You gave me all of the love inside of you, so much of it that it left you empty inside and hurt you in the end. But now I finally feel that love inside of me, pulsing, beating like a second heart. You gave all that love to me and me alone, and now it's time I gave some of my love back to you. But Sasuke. She silenced him with a finger to the lips and smiled again. Forget Sasuke. He had plenty of chances to show me what really mattered, and he failed from day one. She grabbed his hand and pressed it to her chest where her heart was, making the poor boy blush at the contact with her young breast, before pressing her own to his and leaning in to whisper, From this point on, it's only you and me. As soon as she said these words, as she let go of the feelings she had spoon-fed herself all these years, she kissed him on the lips once more and felt her hurting heart begin to mend. Maybe those feelings for Sasuke had been fake all along, or maybe they just lost their power as time went on, but Sakura knew this was different. As she continued to kiss Naruto, squealing a little in delight as he began to return as much as she gave, she felt the shackles on her chained heart begin to fall, allowing herself to finally feel what it meant to be someone important, to be someone special. She didn't know why, but Naruto always seemed to be able to show her that, and she actually yearned for it again and again, until she realized now that those feelings for Sasuke were getting pushed further and further away from her until they were merely reflex with no feeling. She wanted, oh so terribly wanted, just to be important to someone, even if it was just one person, a trait she noticed was similar to Naruto. She had never felt that with Sasuke, but she knew that Naruto would give that to her in spades, when he was ready to. She still had to earn his trust, but at least now she knew that it would be more than worth it in the end. Both of their bodies kept getting hotter and hotter until it was almost uncomfortable, but they never broke the kiss. If they had, then they would have realized that the heat was from Kyuubi's chakra completely enveloping them for a few minutes before receding, filling their body with it. For what purpose, only Kyuubi knew, and she wasn't about ready to break this up. Naruto wrapped his arms around her slim body and pressed her close, before he then flipped over and pinned her under him, to which she mewed in happiness at his aggressiveness. He continued his wonderful ministrations on her lips before pulling back, and she gazed up at him before cupping his face with her hands and gasping in happy shock. Deep within Naruto's eyes, she noticed a small spark of his true self shine out, and she wanted to cry with happiness at the fact that he was finally letting her peek into his heart. It seemed Naruto, though, had other plans, as he lowered himself to her and kissed her on the lips before slowly moving to her cheek, then her jawline, and finally her earlobe. Sakura couldn't hold in the groan of delight as he gently kissed the area where her jaw and ear met, and she shuddered a little in lust as he moved down her neck, continually planting kisses along the way, before arriving at her collarbone. He trailed along the raised skin for a little bit before shifting his path towards her shoulder and back up her neck. Tsunade's teacup fell to her desk as she watched the crystal ball with her jaw dropped and an ever-increasing blush spreading quickly across her whole body that would have put Hinata to shame. The fire daimyo had contented himself by gazing at some of the artwork in the office, though his face held a satisfied smile. Jiraiya was alternating between staring at the orb and preventing his hand from reaching the notebook in his pocket, muttering as he did so, must resist urge to write. Must not perv on godson's love life. He then raised his head towards the ceiling and screamed out, Why, Kami? Why? Sakura wasn't sure how much longer she was going to resist before finally saying screw the law, and take him here and now, but she was saved when he finally reached her lips again and planted a long yet loving kiss. When he finally pulled away from her and gazed down at her shuddering form, Sakura had to force herself to breathe and calm down, her face quite red from blushing, before she turned her gaze to her husband and smirked. Oh Kami, I wish we were 14 right now. Naruto chuckled a little before leaning down and planting a quick kiss on her lips before replying, You think you have it bad? I've been trying to keep my lust for you under control since we were 10. Sakura growled playfully and smacked his shoulder. Pervert. Takes one to know one, dear. She giggled in response before gently nudging him. Up. I need to check my makeup. Naruto grinned and started to lean down again. You look fine. I could look like a messed up clown right now, and you'd probably still think I was beautiful. Up. Naruto sighed dramatically but got up from her, allowing Sakura to check the mirror. Her mascara had run a little and the hairpins had been shifted a tiny bit to loosen the ponytail, but those were just a couple quick fixes. Aside from that, she still looked immaculate. When she was done, she smiled widely as she approached the boy before gently kissing him again. She then said, Now, I'm heading back to Tsunade Dano's office. If you behave, then I'll bring Ichiraku's again. An evil smirk played across her lips as she leaned towards his ear and whispered, If you're really good, I might just let you get me out of this kimono and eat it off me. It was amazing how no blood landed on the girl whatsoever, considering A, how close the two of them were, and B, how Naruto's nose had become a geyser powerful enough to sending him flying from where they stood onto his back on the bed. He stared at the ceiling with widened eyes yet again, while both Sakura and Kyubi laughed. Sakura approached him and coyly said, "Oh my, Naruto-kun. Your nose is always bleeding when you're around me. Are you sure you're okay?" Naruto threw a playful glare at her and growled through his hand, "Damn vixen." Sakura laughed again and leaned in to peck his cheek before turning to the door and saying as she exited the room, "I'm serious, though. Get some rest and eat some breakfast. I think you might need the energy today." She closed the door and sighed happily. As she turned towards the hall, Nico appeared in front of her and asked, "Sakura-dano, are you ready to head back?" Sakura nodded her head, and the two of them vanished once again into a shunshin. As Sakura reappeared in the room, she noticed Tsunade had a blush currently on her face, while Jiraiya was strangely enough holding his hand back from his pocket while muttering about it was so unfair. Quickly putting two and two together, she smirked and raised an eyebrow. "Enjoyed the show, everyone? Sorry it couldn't have been more, but you know, those damn age restrictions." Tsunade just blushed harder, while Jiraiya was now rocking back and forth, frantically saying, "I am no pedophile. I am no pedophile. I am no pedophile. Big. Gorgeous. Tsunade's." He then visibly relaxed and sighed happily. "Ah, everything's now right in the world." A hard punch from said woman and one pervert halfway into the wall later, Tsunade managed to shake off her blush and smile gently at the girl. "I trust the two of you have come to an understanding now?" Sakura nodded and happily chirped out, "Yep yep." Tsunade nodded her head, and Katsuro stood and walked to the girl, putting his hands on her shoulders. "Good. I never had a doubt in my mind you two would make this work." Sakura nodded her head, and the daimyo walked towards the door. "Now then, I believe we have kept the council waiting long enough. Shall we go?" Everyone nodded and left the room, though not before Jiraiya was extracted from the wall. Naruto laid on the bed where Sakura had left him, still staring up at the ceiling in bewilderment. A week ago, he would have laughed bitterly at the thought of any of this happening, but it was happening, and it was happening now. If Sakura wasn't falling for him now, then damn, would that girl be able to kiss when she did? Thinking about Sakura and what she was doing now made him scowl. He knew from his past dealings that it was going to take every bit of effort for the council to accept things as they were happening. At least on the civilian side, it would. The shinobi side would be a little more accepting of it, as they were more neutral towards him than anything else. But it's not as if they would raise a finger to help him and Sakura should they need it. No, this was going to require him to perform more drastic measures. Standing up from the bed, he growled out, "NBU." 6 figures appeared in the room, and Nico approached him, asking, "You require something, Naruto-san? Would you be able to get some quick measurements of me for a formal kimono to be purchased post-haste?" The 6 nin glanced at each other before Hibi answered, "We could." He raised a hand towards them. "Get me that kimono, and quickly! I've got a council meeting to crash." One ANBU cocked his head to the side in confusion. "If you don't mind me asking, Naruto-san, why?" Naruto's smile could almost be considered to be feral as he replied, "The fox is now screaming at me to protect my mate from that pack of wolves, and I'm currently inclined to agree with her." Sakura was standing outside the doors to the meeting room, her breathing surprisingly even and calm. How interesting how things get put into perspective when you either do or don't know the outcome of what's to happen. Naruto listening to her confessions terrified her because she didn't know how he would react. Meeting with the council, however? She was half expecting to sleep through it until Tsunade woke her up for her part, since it was pretty obvious that the council would act as they had planned. Besides, the thought of going back to that hospital room and showing her husband just how well she could kiss was actually keeping her calm, though it was getting hard to hide the lecherous grin on her face. Since when did I become such a pervert? Is it the fact that I'm finally able to have the chance to be perverted that's making me do this? Is my inner persona finally taking control of me? Have I been a pervert all along? Oh, who the hell cares? Let's get this damn thing over with so I can go back and show my husband just how special he is to me. She just barely refrained from letting out a perverted giggle that would have made Jiraiya proud as an image flashed into her mind, and she turned to the other 3 with a wide smile on her face. "Shall we get started then?" Tsunade raised an eyebrow at the girl's excited manner but smirked and nodded her head anyway, and the 4 stepped through the door. "Naruto-san?" An ANBU flashed into the room with a package in hand and held it out to the boy. "Your kimono, as requested. I took the liberty of having the Hokage pay for it in your stead to speed things along." Naruto nodded his head in thanks before gently taking the box and laying its contents onto the bed. A blood-red base kimono with black flames at the hems and a black sash with a black Michiyuki *** that displayed a dark red yuzu whirlpool on the back laid next to them. Naruto smiled mirthlessly. How fitting for my mood, and also enough to strike a little fear into the hearts of those fools. Not caring that he might have an audience, he shrugged out of his hospital gown and slipped the ensemble on, tying the belt on with a certain amount of skill that the ANBU didn't expect from someone who never wore formal clothing. He stepped over to the mirror and smirked at the image he saw. No doubt the council was going to throw a fit when they saw him try and appear respectable, and that's just what he wanted. The fools would be so focused on the fact that he dared intrude on their meetings and act like he was meant to be there, they would forget about the daimyo and Tsunade pushing forward their own agendas, a win in Naruto's book. He slipped on the sandals that came in the package and turned to the ANBU. Now, if you would be so kind as to shun me to the council room? Preferably in the shadows of the room. I want to first watch how this plays out without my interference, so I don't want anyone alerted to me just yet. Hebe nodded and grabbed his shoulder before vanishing with the boy. As the four of them entered the room, Tsunade took the Hokage's seat in the center podium, while Jiraiya stood to her side and Katsuro went to the side of the room. There was a raised podium that overlooked the room that was specifically reserved for the fire daimyo whenever he visited, allowing him to see every person present. Sakura stood in the center of the room, her entire posture regal and almost prideful for one so young. Some people glanced at one another, wondering if somehow the girl was on trial for something they weren't aware of. Once the daimyo was seated, he said loudly, "Now that we are finally all here." A few people glanced angrily at the councilman responsible for being there so long but kept silent. "We can begin the discussion for why we are here." One council member from the civilian side stood and cleared her throat. "Honored daimyo, we have called this meeting to demand that Hokage Tsunade Senju permanently remove Naruto Uzumaki from the shinobi ranks." "Oh? On what grounds?" Within the last 24 hours of Uzumaki returning from his failed mission to retrieve Sasuke Uchiha, he suffered a mental breakdown in the middle of the village and attempted to kill himself. Tsunade interrupted the woman. "And on what grounds does that accusation warrant his permanent removal from the shinobi ranks? He needs time off and counseling, yes, and possibly even some psyche evaluations, but all shinobi require this after a while. Attempted suicide warrants him being suspended from the ranks, not expelled. He would only be expelled if he had succeeded in killing anyone else." Another member shot up and pointed his finger at Tsunade. "Aha! But that's the real problem, isn't it? That boy did nearly kill us all when the man stopped and glanced at Sakura, who was smirking at the man's discomfort. He cleared his throat and quickly gestured to her. "Tsunade-san, would you be so kind as to send your apprentice out for this?" Sakura's eyebrow rose as she said, "Oh? And why would Tsunade-dano need to do that, oh honored council member? Surely whatever you were going to say wouldn't be so bad that someone of my generation can't hear it." The man glared at her as he spluttered with his words, and Sakura grinned evilly. "What's the matter? Kyubi got your tongue?" The civilians all turned to stare at her with pale faces, while Tsunade was barely able to hide her snickers before saying, "As you can see, Sakura is aware of Naruto's condition as a Jinchuriki for the Kyubi, as she should be due to her relationship with him. In any case, what did Naruto do that nearly destroyed Konoha?" The man waved his hand around frantically and yelled, "Well, isn't it obvious? He tried to let out the Kyubi from her," Sakura muttered while nonchalantly examining her nails. She held up one hand and gasped loudly. "Oh my! I think one of nails is chipped." From its cage, the man nearly screamed, his face turning purple at the girl's lack of respect. He was out of his mind and was trying to destroy the village in some sort of baseless, petty revenge. Clearly, he needs to be removed for the greater safety of everyone else around him, possibly put into a mental asylum while we find a new host for Kyubi. The council suddenly shivered as they felt the temperature in the room drop below zero when the girl exuded a deadly aura. When people began to look at her again, the closed-eyed smile she had on her face promised death for the next person to say what she didn't want to hear, despite the sickly sweet tone she spoke with. "Well then, I guess it's good that none of you can do that, can you?" The man seemed to recover a bit of himself enough to sneer at her. "What do you mean, girl? We are the esteemed council of Konoha, and it is well within our rights." "But that's where you are wrong, oh wise and wonderful council member." The sweet voice was actually beginning to scare some people, which the daimyo smirked at as he listened. "You are clearly overstepping your boundaries, as the Konoha Charter states that the council may only deal with matters regarding the civilian population and must defer to the Hokage regarding all matters regarding both shinobi and clan matters." Her eyes narrowly opened as she focused her glare. "Any attempts to usurp this position either through so-called legal channels or illegal means is considered treason and punishable by execution. In the shadows of the room, Naruto raised an eyebrow at his new wife. Well, this is a side of her I've never seen before. This cruel and calculating part of her must have been repressed, only for her to reveal it when her enemies' backs are turned. He then grinned fairly again. And I like it. Tsunade smiled smugly as she gazed down at the girl before her. If Naruto isn't interested in being Hokage anymore, then I'll see if I can get Sakura to do it after some training. This girl could make these guys shit themselves on a daily basis if she so wanted. Aloud, her tone of voice matched Sakura's as she coolly stared down the rest of the room. Indeed, interfering in Naruto Uzumaki's career and lifestyle would be a serious breach of jurisdiction, and I could have you all hanged for treason against 2 clans of Konoha for unjustly confining him. One could almost hear the small neck cracks as the council looked back at Tsunade with shocked faces. They stared at her, as if they couldn't believe what they had just heard, and Inoichi dug into his ear with his pinky to clear out some sort of imaginary blockage. Excuse me, I must be going deaf. Did I just hear you correctly when you said that Uzumaki was the heir of 2 clans? Tsunade looked thoughtful for a second before gently pounding her closed hand into her palm with a surprised look. Oh. Excuse me? I was mistaken. The entire room sighed in relief, as the implications of that statement would have been really bad to reveal with the daimyo there. Tsunade let them relax a little before smiling maliciously and gleefully pulling out another piece of paper. I forget that he's also the potential heir of a 3rd clan, my own. Everyone froze, and quite a few of them did indeed shit their pants then and there as they then realized just how deep in it they now were. Hamura stood and smiled shakily at the woman, nervously dabbing his head with a handkerchief. And now, Tsunade-chan. Tsunade-dano, Sakura corrected with smugness. Hamura glanced at the girl and cleared his throat. Tsunade-dano, you can't just go around making accusations like those without some sort of proof. Tsunade smirked and held up Naruto's birth certificate, and everyone turned ghost white when they saw displayed prominently on the page Naruto Namikaze Uzumaki. Hamura's eyes widened considerably, and he fell into his seat nearly babbling. Kohara decided to speak in his place and nervously say, "Oh come now, Hokage-dano. Surely those are forged? I mean, we would have known if Minato-san had a child." Sakura rolled her eyes and said nonchalantly, "Oh. And I guess seeing Kushina-dano walking around like a beach ball had been shoved under her dress was all just an illusion." Another nameless council member growled out, "Oh please." As if the Yuzahor would have kept her legs closed to anyone else. The temperature dropped even lower this time, and Sakura snarled out, "I would keep that tongue of yours in check, commoner, lest you find it ripped out of your mouth. I will not have you slander the name of a loyal Konoha nin who died for this shithole." Some raised an eyebrow at the girl and said, "And why would you care about this, Sakura Haruno? By what claim do you have to make this accusation?" Sakura smirked and raised her ring finger up as if it were her middle, making the woman's eyes go wide as Sakura smugly stated, "That's Namikaze Uzumaki to you, Inuzuka-san. As of 3 days ago, I have become Naruto-kun's lawfully wedded wife." The entire room exploded into an uproar, many people taking sides to exclaim that there was no way the marriage was true, that Naruto must have used some form of demon magic to make her become his wife, or that the girl was trying to bewitch the honored heir. Naruto had to suppress a snort when he heard that, in giving her all his money and power. It took several minutes for order to be restored, and when it finally was, several people were giving the girl either withering or bewildered looks. Sakura just took it all in stride and said, "If you think that I am lying, then very well." She turned to Katsuro and bowed deeply. "Daimyo-sama, I wish to request a boon of thee." The older form of speech impressed the man of how serious the girl was taking this, as it was the formal way for one lower than him to speak to him in an official manner, and imperiously nodded to her. "And what dost thou ask of us, Namikaze-dano? What request dost thou wish us to grant?" "My lord, these people in this room are trying to slight my husband and his heritage, as you have clearly seen. I wish to request those under thou's command to perform a blood test to confirm once and for all the validity of his parentage and the faithfulness of his mother, my predecessor matriarch of the clan." Several people paled at her words, but Sakura kept her head bowed to the man as he made an act of thinking deeply before nodding again. "Very well, Namikaze-dano. Of this, we shall grant thee." He looked to those in the room and, noticing some of their looks, he raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Dost our decree upset many of you? Speak then. Tell us why this should not be." Inoichi looked to the other clan heads and, seeing their agreement, nodded his head and stood to address the lord. "Daimyo-sama, if thou dost permit it, I wish to direct one question to the young woman and demand that she speak truthfully to me." Tsunade's own eyes widened for the first time since the meeting began, and she started to sweat nervously under her hat. "Drat. Please, Kami. If this is meant to help Naruto, Please don't let him ask anything that may compromise their marriage. Katsuro thought deeply about it, but he realized that it was a reasonable request. Technically, he wanted to see what would happen to this young couple as time passed on, and if he so wished it, he could see this marriage continue under his decree without the council's approval. Not that it mattered since they couldn't repeal the marriage legally anyway. Besides, it would give him a good measure of just how much of a cool head this girl would be able to keep under pressure. So he nodded his head. Speak. Inoichi nodded and turned his head to the girl. It was actually a little unnerving to see one so young stand there unflinchingly and stare him down from where she stood, and she was on lower ground than him. Inoichi had to at least give her credit for that. Most other girls her age would now be a trembling mess of terrified nerves. Clearing his throat, he then said, Sakura-san, I only ask this of you, why should any of us trust you in regards to being Uzumaki's wife? The claims of his heir status withholding for the moment, there is really nothing in this marriage that should have appealed to you to make this choice. So why should I or anyone else on this council believe that you have his best interests at heart, when up until his defection, you only sought the affections of the traitor, Sasuke Uchiha? Damn it, Tsunade thought morosely. Come on, Sakura. Just keep a calm head and you'll be fine. It's not like the girl needed the encouragement though, as Sakura just put on a wry smile and shook her head. It really doesn't surprise me anymore when someone questions the validity of my actions. I guess I only have myself to blame for that. She raised her gaze to the Yamanaka and crossed her arms under her chest comfortably. You want to know why I chose Naruto over Sasuke? Fine. It is because I need him. That got some people's dander up, but she merely raised a hand and waved them to silence once more. That's not what I meant. When I say I need him, it is not as a potential husband or a path to fame and glory. No, I need him simply for him, and him alone. Fine, yes. I once had a crush on the Uchiha, and I would be lying if I said that there were no more feelings for him still within me. Yet despite those feelings, I found myself wanting something more, something better. She started to pace a little, looking each member confidently in the eye as she continued. Imagine yourself in my shoes. You joined the Ninja Academy to become something different than what your parents had already achieved, and you happened to come across a young handsome boy who was considered a prodigy. You at first admire him and his skills, but you also want him to notice you and think that you are worth his time as an equal on the field, so you dive into your studies and training. Then, that same boy experiences a horrid tragedy, and suddenly, you don't just admire him, you want to be with him, become the new center of his life as he tries to pick up the pieces. You train even more earnestly than before, fighting tooth and nail against several others who think the same way you do, all the while hoping that this cold boy will somehow deem you worthy of his affections. Finally, the day comes when you see if whether or not your hard work has paid off, and you become delighted to discover that this prodigy is now on your team because you sacrificed friendships, family time, and all of your free moments to get there. But it's okay, because he will surely see what you've done and accept you, right? Wrong. The prodigy doesn't like you in the slightest. In fact, he sees you as a hindrance to his overall goals of avenging his family, because evidently the dead cry out to him every passing moment of the day for him to get stronger and kill their murderer. So he practically crushes your dreams and hopes without a care in the world, and you try to piece everything back together and hope that maybe next time, you'll get through to him. Shikaka sighed a little and turned his gaze onto the girl. Sakura-san, I mean no offense, as this is an interesting tale, but is there a point to all of this? Sakura raised a chiding finger to the lazy man and admonished, Hush, Nara-san. You asked for my point of view, and I am trying to make you understand it. She turned back to the room and resumed her pacing. Now, while all of this is going on, there's also another boy hanging around who's a bit of goofball and a pariah. He's hyperactive, oblivious, not all that intelligent regarding certain things, a loudmouth, and a braggart. But he tries his hardest and gives his all to make his dreams come true. You laugh at his dreams, thinking them impossible, but you offer him a helping hand every now and again just so he doesn't think everyone won't take him seriously. He has a crush on you, which you find annoying at first but then later begin to accept it as it is and even think it's kind of sweet despite being a little irritating at times. You help him all throughout the academy and are surprised to find out that not only has he passed, but he's now also on your team. Time passes, and your team has started to develop a certain trend. You try your hardest to get closer to the prodigy, only for him to keep rebuffing you and making you feel worthless, while the pariah showers you with lavish attention and praise that outwardly you are afraid to accept and wind up throwing it back into his face, while inwardly you desperately cling to it like water in a desert, and quietly thank him for his wonderful words. The prodigy would leave you behind at first chance if he could, while the pariah would search to the ends of the world to make sure you are okay. The prodigy could care less if you lived or died so long as it doesn't impede his progress, while the pariah will throw himself in the middle of an enemy attack that he has no chance of winning to protect you with his very life. This kind of devotion shocks you, because you wonder just what you've done to deserve it, but you find that you want more of it. Suddenly, you wake up one day and start going through the motions of wooing the prodigy, just so the pariah will then come and pick your spirits back up. You suddenly care about what the pariah thinks more than the prodigy, and this confuses you a little but at the same time excites you. It's new. It's fresh. It's everything you ever wanted and so much more, and it's even slightly taboo, makes even more exciting for you. You're a little scared about where this might go, but you're also happy enough with the love and attention you receive that you find you just don't give a damn anymore. She stood again in the middle of the room and gave them all a level stare. I'll admit, it took me a while to realize the feelings that were building up inside me, but when Naruto was finally ready to show me what was really inside his own heart, I made my choice. Sure, I could have kept on pursuing the Uchiha until the end of time, but there is no love or warmth left in him, while Naruto was willing to show me that I was more than special to him and actually wanted me for who I was, not what I was willing to do. A life of being essentially a baby factory for new Uchiha, or a life of happiness and caring? Not all that hard to see which path I would choose. The rest of the room just sat there in shocked silence. How does someone refute that? They had no way of telling if the girl was lying or not, but the utter conviction with which she spoke said volumes about just how serious she was. Besides, it really wasn't that hard of a choice. Some girls rushed into marriage without thinking of the consequences, and if Sakura had gotten her way back when Sasuke was still in the village, she really would have become nothing more than what she just said, a baby factory who was only paid attention to when receiving the Uchiha's seed and when she gave birth to the children. Still, there was no way they were just going to let some civilian girl get access to the Namikaze and Uzumaki fortunes and jutsu libraries without them trying to get their own girls in place as well. Sakura noticed the calculating looks in the council's eyes, and she smirked while narrowing her own. Do you think me a simpleton? They all gave her a confused look, and she rolled her eyes. Please. I see your minds working rapidly on how to use this to your advantage. It's hard to believe you are even politicians, you're all so transparent. So, I might as well cut out your legs from under you. The evil smirk returned, and the room chilled yet again, making others wonder if she had some form of latent bloodline limit. Her words actually felt like they were freezing their souls. As I am Naruto's wife, and he has married me before he turned 15, then this council may not interfere in any way, as per the Konoha Charter. In other words, if any of you think that you can try and force my Naruto to have any more wives aside from me, you're going to find those poor girls gutted on your doorstep like a fish at market. Several people shouted with rage again, but it was Hamura who stood up and yelled, Now you see here, girl. You think you can just walk in here and dictate to us the terms of this marriage? Her glare leveled at him, and her predatory smile nearly made Hamura have a heart attack. No, you see here. You were willing to overlook the laws just so you can get what you wanted, but it's now time you paid your dues. You had the chance to make Naruto into something great, and have him owe you something for your help, but you chose not to. Now you will have to sit back and watch as I do what should have been done years ago, and give Naruto the happiness he deserves. And if you don't like it, well, I have no problem of making your lives a living hell for a very long time. Hamura snorted and crossed his arms in defiance. Ha! I've seen your records, girl. You don't have any power to back those claims up. Sakura's smile never left her face as she slowly took out her pins and shook out her hair. She then crooned out, Oh, Hamura. Quicker than anyone could see, her hand flashed out, and Hamura screamed as he felt one of the pins pierce his left eye. As he flailed about, screaming like a baby for someone to help him, he felt the other shoot into his calf and send him toppling over the table onto the floor. He thrashed around before a foot slammed into his shoulder, making him look up into the hate-filled smile of the green-eyed devil herself. It's Sakura Dano to you, common scum. I may have been a civilian, but my news station elevates me higher than you so-called elders, and I'll carve the respect out of your flesh if you don't give it willingly. Remember your place. She turned her gaze to the civilian side, and many saw death reflected back in it. That goes to the rest of you as well. The civilians of this village should remember that they are here at the sufferance of the Hokage and the daimyo. This place is a military dictatorship, headed by the Hokage with the clan heads as her commanders. If you don't like that fact, get out. Her gaze then traveled to the clan heads, and even the battle-hardened, tough-as-nails bitch who takes shit from no one. Some Inuzuka gulped at the look in this young woman's eyes. And if the clans don't like serving with those who they hate, then feel free to take your clans and go. I just hope you have fun with the kill-on-sight orders that we'll send to every daimyo and kage out there to remove traitors from the shinobi world, because I'll certainly enjoy watching your mangled corpses be dragged in and hung from the Hokage monument as a message to those who would go against the Hokage and the fire daimyo. You could hear a pin hit the floor loudly, the room was so quiet. Everyone just stared at this young girl who had effectively just ripped the rug out from under them and reminded them just who was in charge. a blonde woman wearing the Kage hat, and now this pink-haired young lady with fire in her very soul. The silence was broken when Koharu shot to her feet and screamed out, "Kill her!" Before anyone could blink, several tendrils of red chakra shot from the shadows and enveloped the two elders and those in the civilian council who shot to their feet to assault the girl. It burned at their skin, melting it away to reveal muscle, sinew, and bone. They all screamed until their throats bled, and then they screamed some more until their vocal cords were turned to goo. The fluids that were once their various body parts and organs all oozed to the floor into a large congealed, steaming mess, and the bones of the once council members collapsed into a heap. Once again, the room was sent into stunned silence, and a low voice then said, "No. I think this has gone on long enough." They turned to the shadowy corner of the room as footsteps were heard. Out of the darkness walked Naruto Namikaze Uzumaki in all his splendor, his blank eyes almost lazily taking in the carnage that he just unleashed while little wisps of Kyuubi's chakra danced around his fingers. Sakura brightened at the sight of him but restrained herself from launching towards him. After all, they still had a part to play, and her showing extremely lavish attention upon him would probably work against them. Naruto glanced around the room once more, making sure that no one else had any objections to what he'd just done. Out of all the people there, aside from Tsunade, Jiraiya and Sakura, the only other person to be perfectly calm about this was Danzo Shimura. Naruto had never trusted the old man, as he was a war hawk of the old guard, a man who believed that only by crushing your opposition could you have peace. Since Naruto had trusted Sarutobi, then naturally he had distrusted the man who was currently looking at him with calculating eyes. With a hollow voice he then said, "I guess that this leaves only you, Danzo. Everyone else here has clearly made their opinions known regarding what my heritage is. What of yours?" The old man sat there in contemplation for a little bit before his aged voice said, "When you were brought back from the ceiling, I had privately told Sarutobi that mentioning your status as a Jinchuriki would be a foolish mistake. Many people in this village are not capable of understanding the intricacies of the sealing art. In fact, many people in the world as a whole are not. I knew, however, that your power should have been put to use for the good of the village, but Sarutobi was not thinking straight and had certain delusions that the people would respect the power and word of the Hokage and allow you to have a normal childhood." He waved his hand in a dismissal. "Of course, he ignored my warnings and made the mistake of leading the council meeting that day with your status and not mentioning your potential heritage until it was too late. In that one foolish move, he all but defanged you and left you without a way to either know or understand either the power of Kyuubi or the extent of your own abilities. I didn't really care if you were pushed through the standard Konoha shinobi system or if he had given you to me as part of my root forces. All that mattered to me was to put another valuable weapon into our arsenal to use against those who threaten this nation. Had you been trained properly like I had wanted in the first place, you would have probably been the only thing we really needed to beat back Orochimaru. Combined with the rest of our forces, we actually could have had the chance to annihilate the traitor once and for all."